any fun ideas for experiments, you can email them to ideas@largehadroncollider.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live from Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire, celebrating Fork Fest number 7.
What the fork is going on?
The 7th annual Fork Fest. Well, the first year it was actually called Somalia Fest.
Oh, right.
And it was created as a response to Ian Freeman being banned. Some people, obviously did not approve of that, so they forked off and made their own festival. And that's how Fork Fest came into existence, and it has since evolved and grown into its own thing. And when I say it's grown into its own thing, I mean it, because Fork Fest is decentralized.
It is.
No one is in charge, so no one's planning anything. Okay. We say that, right? But realistically...
I'm planning a thing.
Yes, but no one's planning Fork Fest.
Right, yes.
Sort of, right? But we're the ones who pick the dates, right? So, we say no one is in charge, and that's true, and people can pick their own dates for Fork Fest. It's all very confusing, and this is the decentralized nature of things. But Fork Fest is going on right now from June the 15th through June the 18th. And if you're listening to this, it's still happening. There's one day left because I'm pretty sure this episode is going to go on Saturday.
Yes.
Because that way Ian can come up here to go to the wedding. Now, if we nail out 2 full shows today, then we'll also give them one for tonight. But I think I'm probably just going to call in to Free Talk Live tonight to give them an update on how things are going. Because
give the eyewitness report?
Yeah.
Nice.
I do it every year. And, well, not every year. Every year that Ian's not here. Because usually he's here and we don't need someone to call in because there's no one there to talk to.
Sure.
But people have begun rolling in, and there is a dome being built down there at the bottom of the hill. I'm looking forward to checking that out. We didn't have a dome last year, if I remember correctly. We usually have a dome. It's the pirate spaceship one year. The Big Gay Disco was another one. It was originally the Big Gay Dance Party.
Right, right.
And then the person who ran that, I don't remember his name, stopped coming. But on that subject, that's what I want to talk about, because there was a drag show there a number of years ago, and it happened and everything went just fine. Right. No one's kids got molested. No one got attacked. Everything was just fine because drag queens, believe it or not, are just like normal damn people, only...
If anybody out there listening who's upset with the Drag Queen Story Hour thing, particularly here regarding Fork Fest and Pork Fest, and you listened to any sort of 1980s glam rock / heavy metal... I'm reluctant to call it heavy metal, but you participated vicariously in a drag queen show because all of them dudes were wearing buku, hairspray, makeup, fishnet stockings. All of the things, right?
Gay.
If you listen to Bon Jovi, if you listen to Cinderella, if you listen to Winger,
White
those
Snake,
dudes,
Twisted Sister.
Those dudes had more what I want to call makeup, hairspray, all these accessories than your girlfriend did.
Yep, absolutely. And for those who haven't been following this, I don't know how you missed out on it. It's been rather a controversy. There is some issues going on with the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year and drag shows because Maj, who has been invited to speak, who is a paid speaker, most of the speakers here aren't paid.
How does he get paid and other people don't?
Someone privately gathered up the money, and a realty company gathered up the money in order to pay his appearance fee. But, look.
Free market, okay, that's fine.
Well, sort of. In general, yes.
They're free to spend their money to pay whomever, I guess.
But it's a libertarian festival, and I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you have a libertarian, you can put a microphone in front of them, and they'll start talking. A few years ago, there was this poor college girl, who was super cute, who came here to do an interview. She had 5 questions that she was tasked by her university professor to ask libertarians here. And the poor girl would she would spend an hour with a single libertarian because there were questions about the economy or what they think about the government or whatever. And libertarians can just go endlessly.
Oh,
on
long-winded
those
for
topics.
sure. Yes.
And so she probably planning to interview 15 to 20 people. Instead, she got through maybe 4. Maybe 4 or 5.
Okay. That's admirable.
And of course, we had her on Free Talk Live, and it was a lot of fun. And she was supposed to contact me and let us see the final study or whatever it was she was doing, but she never did that. I'm not terribly surprised. So anyway, Maj is coming, and he threatened to roll up on. That was the terminology he used.
I'm gonna roll up on you.
Any drag queen story hour taking place in, quote, his community. And Bonnie then said, Bonnie of Free Talk Live, obviously, then said, well, you better not. No, she did not say you better not. She said, well, you might not want to come to the Porcupine Freedom Festival then because we're going to have tons of drag shows, which obviously isn't the case, right?
Tons of drag shows.
Yeah.
There might be one.
Maybe. And I'm trying very hard to get this one because it's an ongoing long story. There have been developments. And so they got into it on Twitter, and Dennis Pratt got involved because, Maj is literally threatening violence. And then he omitted his statement to say, oh, by the way, if I'm at PorcFest, then that's my community. Make of that what you will.
Right.
And that's clearly in relation to his other thing because someone raised the point of, well, PorcFest isn't your community, so it's fine. It was like, no, if I'm there, it's my community.
Sure.
No, dude, this is my community. Like, we're libertarians here. It's not your community just because you graced us with your aggressive presence.
It's a community.
Right.
Belonging to, well, everyone who participates.
If anyone, between me and Maj, if one of us has the right to say my community, it's me. It's me, bruh. Chill. So he's still coming, and we tried to get him on the show to defend himself. He refused to do it, and
which is sad. Anyway, go ahead.
He may come and talk to us while here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but I don't have high hopes for it, right? He doesn't seem to want to talk to us, but like this is a particular issue for me being a trans woman, right? I'm not a drag queen. There's a difference between a drag queen and a trans person, but realistically, at the end of the day, it's just someone born as a male presenting as a woman.
Right.
Whether they're putting on the performance that drag queens are doing or not. So the difference between a trans woman and a drag queen is that a drag queen is performing, giving a show, an experience.
It's a theatrical performance.
Right. Whereas a trans person is just living. But contextually, there's realistically no difference between the two.
Yeah.
And that, to me, seems like a threat against me. I didn't take it that way, obviously. I haven't even interacted with Maj because I don't care that much. But anyway, so I'm not going to let Bonnie's threat go as a bluff, right? Because I like the way Mark said it last night or the night before last. If you're listening you're obviously not here, so the night before last. He said, if someone threatens violence and you don't stand up for your rights, then you don't have rights.
Right, yeah. Then it's just a privilege, a temporary privilege.
Right. If someone can intimidate you into not doing something that you have the right to do and that isn't hurting anyone, then you have surrendered your right to do that thing. And I'm not going to do that. I want to say it's that noble cause, right? And maybe it is to an extent. But really, I'm a troll at heart, and this is an opportunity to troll, right? And when we talked to Dennis Pratt about this, he wrote it off as like just trolling. He's like, Aria, don't give me that. You're just trolling, Maj. I'm like, well, time out, dude, because some of my most effective activism was trolling.
Yes.
Right? I was trolling when I ran for sheriff and made international news.
Fantastic campaign, by the way.
Right. Running F the police was the slogan for that campaign.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and it was trolling from beginning to end. And just because something is trolling doesn't mean it's necessarily bad or ineffective or whatever he was alleging based on the fact that it was trolling. So anyway, yes, I will continue to be trolling. I decided, fine, we're going to have a drag queen story hour. Bonnie can't be here, but fine. It's got to happen at this point, right? He threatened violence. He said there would be violence.
Right.
So I'm going to call his bluff, and there will be a drag queen story hour here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival next Thursday at 3 o'clock p.m. at the Free Talk Live site. That's RV46. I call it a drag queen story hour. However, I'm not a drag queen. Recently in Lancaster, like within the last few weeks, they were putting on a drag show.
Okay.
at the public library, and it was two drag queens, Katniss Everqueer and Emoji Nightmare, right? Drag names. That's about what you would expect.
Yeah.
One of these, it turns out, is a cis woman, as I understand it. But these are hard left people, right?
Okay.
One of them, I don't know which one. Ian watched the video. I have not. They did a video about fat pride, essentially. Like
Fat pride?
Yeah. These are
That's new to me.
hard
Okay.
left people, and they are both on the bigger side. But these are hard leftists, right?
Okay.
So I assumed they when I emailed them, they Googled me, or they already knew about me and were like, no, we don't want no. You're too controversial. Because I get that a lot, and I think that would be ironic if they refused to. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that event was
backpedal.
Yeah.
Rewind.
It was going to be at the Lancaster Public Library here, but conservatives got really, really, really upset about the possibility that Jim Bob might take his kids to go see this thing, and God forbid Jim Bob, as a parent, have the right to decide what is best for his children.
Yeah.
That's the hurdle that they seem unable to jump. Is that if for a child to be at a drag queen story hour, the parents of that child must have decided to take that child to that drag queen story hour.
Yeah.
Unless the child is in walking distance, maybe. The possibility of a child being there without their parents' explicit permission is extremely low.
Yeah, rare even. Like, I mean, how does that really happen? Like, ever? Has it happened ever that like a child has been to one of these without their parental consent?
I sincerely doubt it. But obviously, most parents aren't going to have any issue with this, and there's lots of good reasons for this. Mark asked the question, well, why does someone want to do a drag story hour? Well, Mark, we think it's important. I think it's important to expose children to different ways of life that they may otherwise not know about, right?
Yeah, I don't have kids, but I certainly do not believe that you should shield your children from reality, because all that happens, and I'm just speaking from experience as a child who's I've had several different sets of parents, but many of them were of the shielding variety. They wanted to protect me from the bad things in the world. And so then when I finally struck out on my own, I was shocked by reality. And it wasn't anything like they had described, and so I had to like reform all of my thoughts and my patterns and my habits around this new reality, when they could have saved me a whole bunch of time by just not shielding me from reality in the first place and explaining things truthfully as I grew.
I'm a firm advocate, though, that children should be exposed to things that broaden their minds. It would be totally fine to have a black person story hour or a Chinese American story hour or whatever, like especially here in New Hampshire, where they're not ordinarily going to encounter a lot of black people or Asians or whatever. It's important for them to go, hey, this is normal, it's okay, and you treat them just like you treat every other human being.
Right.
And they don't wish you any harm, just like every other human being doesn't really wish you harm. And that's an important thing. Plus, one of these kids may be gay. They may ultimately decide they want to be a drag queen, which is unrelated to being gay, or they may be genderqueer, or they may be trans, or whatever. And this is the part that makes conservatives really unhappy. They think it's going to make these kids gay or trans or whatever, when no, it's just going to let them know that if they are those things, it's okay. Look, if you could be made straight or cisgender, I wouldn't be here right now as I am, because I'm from the Bible Belt, the deep South, Mississippi, right? My grandmother and father sent me to countless not countless, but they sent me to a Pray the Gay Away camp.
Oh, no. Are you serious?
Yeah.
You went to one of those?
Yeah, they did the
Jesus
full thing,
Christ.
right? Like, this is the Bible Belt. They found women's clothes in my room, and they were not having it at all. So, I dealt with all that. They did everything they could to make me a normal straight dude, right?
Yeah.
And if it was possible to affect someone in that way, it would have affected me. But instead, what you find at these Pray the Gay Away camps is that people kill themselves.
Yes.
And or they revert back to actually being gay or trans or whatever. So you're not going to turn any of these kids into being gay or trans or whatever. You're just going to let them know that if you are these things, people will accept you.
And if you look at it from the reverse perspective, how do straight people become straight? Do they attend straight classes? Do they put on, straight seminars? Is there straight story hour? Is there, right?
There
Because
kind of is.
because is there?
There is. It's it's just very subtle,
right? But like,
No, it's pretty overt.
I can't sign up at the library for straight kids story hour. Right, so like
you kind of can though, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like it's called cis heteronormativity, and it permeates all of American society, and you see this with like.
Well, I mean, I'm talking globally, even.
Well,
right?
yeah, this globally as well, but especially in America.
Straight
America's a
sexual
place that I can
orientation doesn't happen because of culture.
Right.
It happens because of nature.
Yes, but it does permeate the culture.
Yes,
like
absolutely it
everywhere.
does. Yeah, absolutely
And
it does.
the best example is like a child, a 4-year-old being told, "Oh, he's such a little ladies' man," or whatever. That's cis heteronormativity.
Right, but the reaction from the conservatives is just one of the belief that your straightness can be taken away somehow.
Right.
Instead, like my belief is that if you identify as not straight, likely you're born that way. Right? That I don't have evidence to say that, but that's my belief. Is that's how that occurs. I've had way too many friends who are not straight. I've known way too many people who are not straight that have told me, look, dude, I was born this way. This is just how I feel. And it wasn't until I did some self-discovery that I was like, oh my gosh, it's okay for me to be this way.
Right. People don't. You don't choose what you're attracted to. It's really that simple. I don't know why these people think if you like redheads, okay, well you didn't choose to be attracted to redheads or brunettes or
We've
blondes.
done stories on Free Talk Live about a dude who is sexually attracted to his vehicles.
Yep, or an ashtray was what we did.
Yeah, and that kind of a thing. So like there are far more different varieties of sexual attraction than human beings even want to admit right now.
Yep, and it's not, sexuality is a complicated thing, right? And it's not about exposing children to sexual material. That doesn't happen at any of these drag queen story hours. It's just normalizing cross-dressing and drag queens to children, which to me is totally fine. These things should be normal because imagine the effect it's having on your kid. Your kid's secretly gay. They haven't come out to you, and you don't know. And they see you ranting all the time about these evil drag queens. You're permanently destroying your relationship with your child by doing this. Your kid may be gay, right? And imagine all of these hateful things, or maybe a drag queen, or maybe a crossdresser, or maybe trans, and they've seen you through most of their life say these horrific, evil, hateful things about people who are not harming anyone. So conservatives got really upset about this drag queen event that was happening in Lancaster, this drag queen story hour, and they began threatening violence. As conservatives like Maj tend to do when something happens.
Like what kind of violence?
I don't know. I didn't see the reports. I just know that the library canceled the event. They were like, "Look, this is." They did get some security that was going to work it. But eventually, even that wasn't enough, and the library was like, look, we're pulling the plug on this.
So the library said, we've received some threats, and we're canceling the thing?
Well, we don't know who received the threats. I just know that it was the library that canceled the event.
Okay.
The two drag queens, to their credit, and White Mountain's Pride, to their credit, they wanted to continue the show. They wanted to keep doing it. And so I was like, man, that's awesome. I think you should have kept doing it, too. So I have an event happening on June the 22nd, I think. I think it's the 22nd.
What day is it?
It's Thursday.
Okay.
And because Windows 11 sucks, when I click the actual date icon, it obviously doesn't open a calendar like it used to,
it's
like
not
it should.
Today, though. It's next Thursday.
Right. Well, today's Friday.
Sorry.
Yeah, but June the 22nd at 3 p.m., though, is when I was hoping to have my tranny story hour. And here's two drag queens who just had an event canceled here in Lancaster.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, come do your thing at my thing. We can merge the two things and have one really awesome
You
thing.
extended the invite.
Yeah, there's going to be 3,000 people here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, especially by Thursday.
Yeah.
You could get a really huge crowd. And, I warned them. I was like, some of these people are conservatives, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want to push back against those conservatives. I want to make the bigots uncomfortable again. I want to make them feel unwelcome.
Yeah.
Just like they're trying to make trans people feel unwelcome throughout society. To that end, I have two flags around me tomorrow. One is a Satanist flag, and one is an LGBT pride flag that I'm going to have hanging here at the site. I wish I had just brought my own, but I didn't think about it until yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, fine. There $6 is a flag on Amazon, so I was like, ship it up.
Yeah.
Right. So I invited these two drag queens out to Porcupine Freedom Festival. I would have had to buy them day passes, I'm assuming, to get them here in the side, but it would have been fine. But they didn't get back to me. And time kept going, and they didn't get back to me, and they didn't get back to me. And White Mountains Pride didn't get back to me. I emailed White Mountains Pride. I contacted both of the drag queens through Instagram. Bonnie emailed White Mountains Pride, and I suspect she also contacted them through Instagram.
I have to ask, did you call?
I didn't have a way to get in touch with them.
They don't have a phone number on their website?
Oh, no. White Mountains Pride, it's just a Gmail account.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much all it is. And I didn't even know who these people were, right? I just knew that there was an event that had been canceled in Lancaster. And it wasn't until some conservative who was really upset, and he did an expose on these evil drag queens, and he happened to release their identities, their drag story names, their drag names, in this little thing. It was all FUD and lies that he was creating to spin about these two drag queens. But that was how I found out that it was Katniss Everqueer and Emoji Nightmares, because he was the one, in his irate anger about these two evil drag queens, he gave me their contact information. So thanks, conservative. So I contacted them,
Backfire.
Bonnie contacted them, and yesterday, one of them finally got back to me. I want to say it was Emoji Nightmare, but I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. But she reports, or he, I don't know what you call a drag queen. They report that they will not be able to attend the event because they have another event on that same day, at that same time.
All right.
I tend to believe people are honest and telling the truth, but the delays that it involved with them getting back to me, and like they
probably had a meeting.
They have large Instagram presences, right? They saw my messages, and and they saw the White Mountains Pride emails from both me and Bonnie, and probably a few other people. And I would understand if they're like, "No, look, we just don't want to do it." Plus, I said, "You can read whatever you want, but it would make this a lot easier if you read one of the Tuttle Twins books that I will provide."
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to say you have to read that.
Right.
But it would make this a lot. It would make that pill
Good
a lot
books, by the
easier
way.
to
The Tuttle
swallow.
Twins are seriously, like, if you got kids and you're freedom oriented, the Tuttle Twins is where it's at.
Yeah, I've got like 6 books that I'm going to be giving away now after the tranny story hour.
Okay.
So anyway, the drag queen, one of them turned me down, and the other one still hasn't responded. So I'm assuming it's going to be a no from both of them. So drag queen story hour at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, not going to happen. However, tranny story hour is still going to happen, and that is June the 22nd at 3 p.m. So come down for that. It's going to be here at the FTL site. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know at least of a few children who are going to come down to it, and it's going to be a good time. I'm just going to read Tuttle Twins to them, right?
Yeah.
And that's all it's going to be. It's not going to be anything weirder than that.
Party on, Wayne.
But we are here at ForkFest, and we're coming up. We're going to talk about other awesome things that are happening here, and we are here all the way through the Porcupine Freedom Festival, so come hang out with us. It's Free Talk Live.
This is novelist Tom Robbins. When my mother was diagnosed with glaucoma, her conservative Virginia physician told her there was only one treatment that might ease her pain and save her eyesight. That treatment was medical marijuana, which he could not prescribe. I offered to get her some and teach her how to use it effectively, but my father objected because marijuana was against the law. So my mother, who loved to read and walk in nature, was condemned to grow cruelly, unnecessarily blind. Tragedies like this happen all the time, but they don't have to keep happening. To learn more about medical marijuana, call the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Here we are at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. June the 15th through June the 18th, you can come and hang out with us. It's beautiful. It's supposed to rain all damn week, apparently, but you can't tell right now.
It's sunny and nice right now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the sky is gray with a thin layer of clouds in parts, but it's a beautiful day. It's idyllic weather. A lot of the times at Fork Fest, the weather is not what you would like. Sometimes it's too hot. Sometimes it's too cold. Like, I remember one year it dropped down to like 30-something degrees one night because we are at the in the mountains of New Hampshire. It gets pretty cold up here at night.
Yeah, it's weird. Shorts, T-shirts, and flip-flops during the day, and then hoodies and hats and flannels at night.
However, today it's like 73 degrees. It's absolutely perfect weather. And I can't help but notice how green the campground is.
It's very green this year.
Is it just me, or is everything, the grass is a lot brighter than it normally is? Like, I saw the picture I took of the Free Talk Live site, obviously, and I'm just shocked when I look at it at how vibrant and luscious the grass is.
Including the rain that's still to come, it has rained quite a bit.
That's
as
true.
far as summer is concerned. Like, spring has just sort of carried over into summer. We've had thunderstorms that, are not that common. They do happen at least annually here, but...
Yeah, I miss thunderstorms, man. That was one of the best things about living in Mississippi.
When I moved here from Seattle, I forgot that thunderstorms were a thing. And then the first spring, I heard I'm like, oh yeah, thunder boomers, man. I forgot about those. I was excited.
And of course, tomorrow, I'm so scattered, right? Like, I was supposed to bring some wireless microphones and a dress, and because tomorrow, of course, is Nikki's wedding. Nikki and Matt of the show, who you may know from Rogers Campground or from
Great
the show
people,
Free
by
Talk
the way.
Live. Yep, they are getting married tomorrow, and I'm performing the ceremony, and I've never performed a wedding ceremony, so this is a new experience for me. As the high priestess of the Reformed Satanic Church, not very many of the things we've done were like monogamous, right? Big on orgies and that sort of thing. Not so much the monogamy.
Yeah.
So we never done this particular ritual, but I'm excited for it, and I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be great.
I'm ordained technically by the Church of Spiritual Humanism. That's where the Reverend part of Reverend Captain Kickass comes from. I've been asked repeatedly to be sort of the Reverend at people's weddings, and I turn them down all the time. Because I just don't like the whole state-sponsored marriage thing, right? And none of these people have been sort of, types where they're like, well, we're going to get married, but we're not involving the state. Whereas this is that case, I believe. Matt and Nikki.
No, they're involving the state.
Are they?
Yeah. But that's fine. It's necessary for legal reasons. Like,
what legal reason? Like
to put each other on each other's health insurance, and
you can do that without that.
To visit hospital, you can't.
Yeah, you can.
I've been married. The reason we got married was to get on each other's health insurance.
Yeah, but what year? Because they've done
company,
things now where you could just declare somebody your whatever. There's a term for it, life partner.
There's also tax breaks,
something like that.
Something like that. There are lots of legal reasons, and it's never happened. But if your partner is in the hospital, I've never heard of them asking for a marriage certificate, but you could provide the marriage certificate in order to get it. So I there's no legal reason to get married. It's simply wrong.
But like there's ways that you can still get that same effect without the actual state marriage license. It still involves the state, of course, where you can declare somebody your legal representative in certain ways, and then you can have jurisdiction over their life just as you would as if you had the marriage license.
Right, but if you have to involve the state anyway, then why go through all those extra hoops instead of just getting the license?
But the people who have approached me have all wanted to involve the state licensing, and so I'm like, no. Besides, I would much rather go to the reception than the wedding. Right? I'm not big on the ceremony stuff, and particularly if it's like a religious wedding. Where they've got all the God stuff going on. It's like, I don't care what you do. I'm not going to judge you for you doing that, but I don't want to be involved in that particular aspect, right? If you guys want to declare your undying love to each other for the rest of your lives in front of a whole bunch of people, great, do it. Just invite me to the party.
Right. Well, I don't have any objection to it. And if people want to involve the state, that's fine. I'll do the paperwork. I think Nikki forgot the marriage license, but I think Matt brought it. I've got to fill it out and take it.
License. You need to ask government permission to get married.
It's more like a notification than an actual license, because they don't. Mississippi had some grounds for refusing to do it, but it was actually if they just made sure you weren't first cousins.
Yeah.
That was the actual reason they did it. But it is mostly a rubber stamp, but it's completely insane. I'm not a fan of involving the state in relationships.
Marriage licensing was originally had something to do with so that slaves couldn't get married.
It did.
Yeah.
It's to prevent interracial marriage. And going even further back, it was about preventing the contamination of royal bloodlines and nobility and things like that. So marriage, from beginning to end, it's always been a sham, right? Not a fan of it, but...
Yeah, that's what the point I was getting at is even during the whole, when gay marriage was a big topic in the political spheres, I was always against it, not because I'm against gays getting married, but because I'm against the legal institution having anything to do with your personal relationships. So that is to say that I think everybody should be equal, straight, gay, whatever.
Yeah, I get it.
Right? No one should have to... But that's not the way the law
sees it, and there are advantages in the legal system to getting married that I can't blame anyone for wanting to take advantage of. It's just I don't support getting welfare, right? But I also can't fault anyone for getting SNAP benefits or whatever. It's I would prefer that institution not be there, but it's there and it's going to affect them. Right. So I don't necessarily see any problem with them taking advantage of it.
So it does come down to preference for me. If there's somebody out there that wants to do a non-state sponsored wedding, and maybe wants Reverend Captain Kickass to officiate, I don't know, maybe I'd do it.
But that's what Ian and Bonnie did.
That I usually turn down.
And Mark officiated it. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I did forget my dress, and that's going to complicate things. I mean, I've got clothes I can wear, but I tend to dress not. I tend to wear pretty revealing clothing.
Oh, I was going
and
to
that's
say,
not appropriate for a wedding.
As the high priestess of the Reformed Satanic Church, shouldn't you have like some sort of a hooded cloak or something?
Well, I did, not a cloak, but
you know what I'm saying.
The dress I was going to wear was one of those pentagram dresses where like the straps of it form a pentagram across your chest. It's really cute, right? I wore it to James Babb's party like 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago, when the Reformed Satanic Church helped sponsor his party.
Okay.
Like 3 years ago. And that's one of the things I want to talk about because like the way Forkfest is for me now, or the way things in general for me now are drastically different from what they were 3 years ago. Like today at Forkfest, the show ends, things wrap up, I go to get something, and then I retire to my hotel room, and I just sort of languish there all night. And I don't, like, and that wasn't the case 3 years ago. I would have been out here hanging out with people and doing stuff, and something changed. But it's not just Forkfest, right? It's easy to say, well, no, you just don't want to be at Forkfest. But no, that's not the case. In February, I went to Vegas.
Yeah.
And the same lethargy afflicted me there. Like, there's something really wrong with you if you can go to Vegas and not have fun. Really.
Well, gee, could it have anything to do with the impending doom of the state hanging over your head, perhaps?
I think it does, and I don't know to what extent it's PTSD from the raid.
I mean,
as
I'm
well.
not trying to psychoanalyze, but it seems to me
it's almost certainly related, right?
Yeah.
Because 3 years ago, Ian was here, and we had a blast. I sponsored parties. The Reformed Satanic Church was here. FUD played here. I was active out and doing stuff.
Right.
And now I'm just not. And someone made a joke recently. Mark called me a libertine last night. And
what's a libertine?
It's someone who is a hedonist, essentially.
Oh.
And, yeah, sure, I'm a hedonist. But he used the example of, he said something like a hedonist is someone who is really sexually active, and they do a lot of drugs or whatever. But, like, I haven't called myself a slut in a really long time. I used to call myself a slut all the time because I was a slut, right? That's fine. I'm not slut shaming. I just was. But I've had sex for like 5 times in the last 2 years. It's just, I'm not interested in it. Like, I could get sex if I wanted it, and I can get sex whenever I decide I want to have it. But the interest in it is just not there in the same way that it's not there to go to parties and socialize. Like, there's something wrong with me.
Is Arya growing up, maybe?
No, it's not that.
No? You're like, no, I'll never grow up.
No, it's that there's something wrong with me, right? There's nothing ungrown up about not having fun or about having fun in Vegas or whatever. Plenty of adults do that.
Yeah.
It's just like something was broken within me after 3 years ago and before 2 years ago.
When did you first determine that something was wrong? When did it occur to you? Like, you might have felt something, and then you're like, I think something's wrong with me.
It was at Louder Than Life in 2021, which would have been, I think, September of 2021. So about 6 months after the raid, I was like, man, something is wrong here, because I had a few opportunities to do some stuff that would have been a lot of fun, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. Thank you. And it was at that point that I was like, I would never have turned that down under normal circumstances. So what's going on? And it's just continued playing out since then in more and more ways that I've noticed that something changed in me in a negative way that I don't like, right? And that I would love to fix, but I don't know. I began seeing a therapist in December, but that's been axed now because I'm going to prison in 10 days. So,
although they might have somebody you can see.
Probably not very good, though. And the therapist that I have, she's really, really good. I want to keep using her, but I'm going to be in prison. So ideally, when I get out of prison, I will be able to get back into that. But I don't know if that's going to fix the issue. I don't know if it's permanent, what was done to me. And I hate that because it makes me sound like I'm a passive person who can't control it or whatever. But I've never experienced anything like this before, right? I've struggled with depression, anxiety, and crap like that my whole life, and the solution was to do some shrooms every once in a while, and it would go away, and I would be fine and not have to deal with depression. But like, this isn't treatable like that was. There's something much deeper here that I want to say is most likely PTSD. Like, just something damaged me on the day of the raid, And it,
Oh, you think?
And
I
it
mean,
hasn't
like,
recovered. Yeah.
That is a trauma event for everybody involved in the raid, and even some people who weren't. Like some people who live vicariously through the events of the Crypto 6, they feel depressed because this happened, right? Because it is an attack on freedom. It's an attack on freedom of speech. It's an attack on the radio show. It's an attack on the listeners, not just an attack on y'all. And yes, first and foremost, it was an attack on y'all. Right. And that's sort of the beginning of it. But like other people, that effect trickles down.
Right.
Because of just the exposure that we have of doing a radio show.
Yeah. So it's something I'm aware of and that I would like to fix. And like when I do go out and do things, I do have fun. It's not like I'm not having fun or something. It's just that I want to go be lethargic. I want to go withdraw into myself. And I don't know why. But it's a weird thing.
I've said this before. I, as just a person, and I'm 51 now, I've adjusted my life to certain ways of being. I require a significant amount of alone time just to exist in the world today. And sometimes it's difficult to explain that to people. People want to come over, people want me to go out, that kind of thing. It's like, I just, I need some me time. I just need to chill and be with my own thoughts, be doing my own stuff.
Right.
Sometimes I find just doing nothing with no sense. Some people refer to it as meditation, like I'm doing some form of meditation, which I probably am. I just didn't know that that's what it was called.
I don't know if I would call it that. I think meditation is a directed, conscious, deliberate thing.
But I'll sit like in a room with no music or sound on, and I'll just sit there and think for an hour or something, right? And somebody's like, "Well, you're meditating, dude."
Yeah, that's meditating.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know that that's, there was a clinical name for this thing. But like to me, that allows me to sort of center myself and like, realign my priorities, figure out what it is. I like to do things on purpose, and I get scattered just as a person. I got 17, 18 projects that are all, less than 2% started that I want to get back to, but I never do. And so I need this sort of alone time to recalibrate and prioritize the things that are important so I can get something done.
Right.
Because I'm a little bit of a scatterbrain when it comes to things that I want to accomplish.
Well, I've always needed alone time as well. And I mean, that's a valuable thing. I have my cats for that. They sort of recharge my social batteries because I can just like chill and pet my cats and it's just me and them and it's great. But it's something more fundamental going on with me than just needing alone time. I still get alone time, and I've always gotten alone time, and that hasn't changed, and the need for that hasn't changed. But it's very curious, and I've always been an introvert anyway, so I'm probably the only one who really notices the difference, at least to this degree, because I've always been an introvert, and generally, I get like adopted by extroverts who are like, "Hey, Aria," and they drag me out into things, and I'm unwilling to go, but I go, and then I have fun, and I stop being introverted. And you know how that goes. It's a classic introvert sort of thing, right? And when I first came to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, it was Will Coley of Muslims for Liberty, Call to Freedom, who was, quote, the extrovert who adopted me and dragged me to things. And of course, he had a family, so he wasn't into like a lot of the things that happened at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, so that was an interesting experience. And then after that, it was sort of, I guess Ian adopted me as his pet introvert at that point. And that's the Fork Fest that I will always remember. And pictures from that one are the desktop background of my computer, because it was a lot of fun, and it was just a great experience, right? And I actually think that was also the year that FUD played here, if I remember correctly.
4 years ago?
Yeah, well, three years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, depends on how you measure it, right? This is the third.
Let's see, I moved in 2019 in May, and I think
this is the second year that Ian was not able to really attend. So 3 years ago, whatever year that was.
Yeah.
Regardless, that year was like, that was peak Fork Fest year, right? That was when Fork Fest was its biggest and its best, and it was fantastic. And then, of course, like 6 months after that, we got raided by the FBI, and I hate to be all cliche, but things just haven't been the same since. And there's no going back, right?
Well, yeah, and they're never going to be the same. That raid certainly changed reality for not only you guys, right? You guys obviously far more affected than anyone else, but it changed reality for everybody. And I remember the same thing happening the last time Free Talk Live was raided as well. It sort of was like, things aren't going to be the same from here on out. Things will be forever different. And I don't know that you can roll that back without the state rolling itself back.
Well, yeah, I mean, once something is done, it can't be undone, right? And this, certainly the previous raid affected everyone, right? But no one was arrested. It didn't happen at 6 o'clock in the morning. No one was traumatized.
There were no tanks,
with
there were no drones,
right.
there wasn't 18 different alphabet agencies surrounding an entire city block, blocking off traffic, people from getting to and from their homes that morning.
Right. The level of violence that occurred on March the 16th, it makes sense that, I would be traumatized. But and I hate saying that, but I don't know what else to call it at this point. But
you got a bunch of military-looking dudes pointing guns in your face. Yeah, that's a traumatic experience.
Yeah, and they literally did threaten to shoot me, right? Like
in your house.
Yes, as I stood on my stairs, basically naked in a pair of underwear with a blanket wrapped around me because it's February or March and it's cold in New Hampshire. So things just haven't been the same since, and it breaks my heart that even unless all the charges were like miraculously dropped right now, there's no going back. Like the friendship that I had with Ian and the Free Talk Live stuff that we did and all of that stuff, like it's never going back to the way that it was.
Right.
And the government took that away from us.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the friendship still exists, obviously, right? And we're still doing Free Talk Live and all of these things still exist, but they broke something.
Yeah, it's going to be forever tainted with the stink of the state.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I mean, and then, of course, is the reality that in 10 days and like 20, well, let's see, it's 11 days and 5 minutes now, or 4.5 minutes, I will be going to federal prison. Yep. I got a call this morning from an unrecognized number, and I was like, oh, is this it? I don't normally answer unrecognized numbers, but I feel like I kind of have to right now.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be just some telemarketer, so.
Oh.
But I mean, soon.
Have they been trying to reach you about your extended warranty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, unfortunately. But soon, I will be called by the U.S. Marshals, and they're going to tell me where I'm going to be serving my prison sentence. And, it's all very soon. It's very, very soon. I have like 10 nights left with my cats.
I know when I say this, I'm speaking for a bunch of people that I know and probably a bunch of listeners, but I don't know how else to say it. I feel sorry for what you're going through. Like, sorry is not the right word, but like, you have my sympathies.
I appreciate it.
And in my opinion, you're doing a stand-up job of toughing through it.
Thank you.
Right? There's not a lot of people who could like handle that pressure and continue to do this show and continue to do all the things that you're doing in your life. I know you're prepping for this eventuality, and so you've got a lot of stuff to take care of responsibility wise with your pets, and you're trying to do things with your stuff and make sure everything's secure, so when you get back out you can still have some sort of a life. You're doing a fantastic job. I think a lot of other people would have cracked by now.
Thank you. It's difficult. I mean, obviously, it's going to be difficult, right? You have this sort of Damocles thing, but it's not that much harder now than it was the entire time as I was under pretrial supervision, waiting on this trial. Ever since March the 16th, I've been waiting on something, and that's no way to live. That's a terrible way to live.
Yeah.
You should live in the present moment, not in the future. Not in the past. You should live in the present. But when there's so much crap going on in your life, it becomes very, very difficult to live in the present. And I still try to, don't get me wrong, and I still think it's possible. And that's the only reason I can sit here doing this show, right, and be fine. It's not that I'm like burying it or anything like that. It's that, no, I'm choosing to be here right now and to experience this. I'm not experiencing 10 days from now. I'm experiencing this moment here. 10 days from now, I can experience that, right? But it's very, very difficult to do that so one of the things that I want to write about when I'm in prison, right, is you see all of these stories that begin with like, they sort of a flashback, like there I was in this situation thinking to myself, how did I get here? And playing all of these things. But that's not what happens, right? When you're in that situation, you're not thinking about the past. It's the future that you're thinking about. So, and I want to write about that because that to me is the interesting. I knew exactly as I, rode with the U.S. Marshals to Concord Jail, I knew exactly how I had gotten there.
Right.
What I did not know was how I was going to get out of there.
Yeah.
And that was where my brain immediately went. There were things within like my present life that I was worried about, like my cats and stuff like that. But like no one in that situation sits around reflecting on how they got there. They know how they got there because it's obvious. They know how they got there. We know what we did that brought us in general, that brought us into this situation. But anyway, so it's most people live in the past or in the future, and they're very, very much not in the moment. And I've always tried to live in the moment, but when there's so much impending going on, and then of course you're waiting on to get out of jail, you're waiting on a meeting with your attorney for your supervised release terms to change, then for this next hearing to happen, and then for another hearing to happen, and then this other hearing, and then you have that there's an additional indictment coming, a superseding indictment, where they're going to charge you with even more stuff. Yeah. And through all of this, you're waiting on this distant future thing that is the trial. And it's just, when you're waiting on that much stuff, it's really hard to live in the present.
The attack of the state doesn't end just when you're arrested, just when you're raided. It doesn't end there. And in fact, it continues on for years and years and years. And something that I think a lot of people maybe innately know who listen to Free Talk Live, maybe innately know that when people do a show like this, the risk that is being taken by anybody who appears on this show is quite large because the state does not like what we do.
Right.
And so these are the risks that are being taken. Now, I think that the hosts of Free Talk Live put their money where their mouth is by doing so, by appearing on this show, by talking about freedom, liberty, peaceful resolution, the non-aggression principle, prosperity, how to be prosperous despite the fact that there's this overwhelming behemoth of a state that is literally oppressing everybody under its wing or under its thumb.
Talking on Free Talk Live in and of itself, they're not going to worry with, right? That's like tweeting or posting on Facebook.
Certainly it'll get you on a list.
Yeah, it'll get you on the list, but they're not going to come and visit you for your tweets or for your posts or for what your statements here on the show. Usually. There is more coming up here from Fork Fest, though, and we're here for a few more days, so come hang out with us. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, remembering the British actress and politician Glenda Jackson, whose death was announced on Thursday at the age of 87. In an acting career that lasted 6 decades, she won 2 Oscars, 3 Emmys, 2 BAFTAs and a Tony Award, honoured for films including Women in Love, A Touch of Class and Queen Elizabeth I in the BBC's Elizabeth R. In her 50s, she turned to politics, becoming a firebrand parliamentarian for Britain's Labour Party. She returned to the stage at the age of 80, and in an appearance last year at the British Film Institute, was asked if she worried that opportunities for women in acting and politics were slipping backwards.
I never really noticed it going forward, but I'm... But I say that more as a female than as a working class female, I have to say. And we're still looking at a situation where contemporary dramatists find women boring. I mean, they are rarely, if ever, the central driving engine of what the writer has decided to explore, and I find that utterly bewildering. Well, I don't find it bewildering, I just bitch about it a lot.
Glenda Jackson recently completed a new film alongside Michael Caine. On Thursday, he described her as one of our greatest movie actresses. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denslow reporting.
I always dreamed of providing the nation with concise recaps of the week's events. One fateful summer in 1934, legendary onion mogul T. Herman Zwiebel was passing through our town to acquire an oil derrick when he overheard me calling in the oxen in my breathy baritone and offered me the opportunity of a lifetime. Yes, from the turbulent war times of the 1940s.
The Onion welcomes the majestic Axis armies as conquering heroes.
To the free-spirited 60s. And remember, there's nothing more cosmic than keeping your house insulated with Thermoflake brand asbestos. I can truly say I've been here for the turning of the ages. But now, viewers, my beautiful 19-year-old wife and I will take our much-deserved retirement to my Genevan chateau. I wish all of my detractors empty, destitute lives. And for my allies, I hope for all the pleasures availed by heaven. So, finally, let me say one last time, for more, keep checking theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, coming at you from Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Sorry, Sarah from New Mexico, we're not taking calls tonight. I don't know if she's not listening to the show, so I don't know how she would find that out. She'll probably call the studio.
Is it weird that we have callers that don't listen and just call?
I don't know. Maybe. We have a lot of callers who do that.
I don't know a lot, but a handful we do. There's a few that call but don't listen. I mean, because of the way we have the phone system set up, they can't help but listen if they're on hold.
Right.
So I guess to some extent they have to listen if they're calling.
And Sarah spends a lot of time on hold sometimes, so she may be. But Ian and Bonnie will be in the studio because when we do this, we pre-record the segments and I upload them and they set them all up and then they get broadcast. And Ian and Bonnie sit in the studio listening to the show.
Yep.
So they will see it, presumably, when Sarah calls.
Right.
And I don't know if they'll call and be like, yeah, sorry, Sarah, we're not taking calls tonight, or if they'll just ignore it. I don't know. But anyway, we are not taking calls because we are on site here at Rogers Campground. It's Fork Fest number 7, happening June the 15th through the 18th, of course, but you're listening to this, and it's going to be the 17th. So if you want to make Fork Fest, you've got to get down here pretty soon. I'm a little bit surprised. It looks like that would be Sean and his family, Sean of Chuckwagon Sodas. Also, they do a number of, they used to have a number of food trucks, but they sold most of them.
Yeah.
But it looks like he has arrived. He told me he would be arriving here today, but he won't be set up to sell drinks and stuff until, I think he said Sunday.
Okay.
So a lot of other people are beginning to arrive. Of course, the Dome down there, I'm curious to see what is going on down there.
Yeah.
It was not there this morning when I first got here. I was one of the first people here. It was really weird. I'm not used to being one of the first people here.
You're becoming an overachiever.
Not at all. But usually there are other people here doing stuff. And this year, I want to say I was the first Fork Fester here. I think I beat Chris here,
if
I remember correctly. But I don't really know. It was just strange to get here and look around. And like none of these people were here yesterday when I got here. And I just sort of did my things, took my time setting up. And I think I did a pretty good job. It looks great, right?
Yeah.
Actually managed to put the tarp on top of the canopy this year because it's, as mentioned, it's going to rain every single day.
Yep.
And usually it doesn't rain enough for that to matter, but the canopy here does have a few tiny holes in it, but it usually doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when it's raining every single day, let's gotta do something about it. So this year, the big highlight of Fork Fest is the wedding that is taking place, and that's going to be, for us, it's tomorrow. For people listening, it will have already happened. So if you're listening, you missed the wedding. Sucks for you. Maybe next year.
Yep.
If there's a wedding next year. And then, of course, after that, the Porcupine Freedom Festival kicks off, and that's going to be a wonderful experience.
And
I'm
in
looking
between
forward to
those
it.
two things, too, I'm doing a listening party for
That's
my
right.
3-song EP on Sunday night, Forkfest Eve, or Porkfest Eve, if you will.
Well, that's still Fork Fest.
It is still Forkfest, yeah. And I wanted to do it during Forkfest specifically, and I thought the best night to do it would be Sunday night, right? Well, sort of the...
That way you're not competing with a wedding and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And also, I'm not competing with Porkfest as well, right? Because they have so many things going on during the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And that way, people who come early, for the Porcupine Freedom Fest, maybe they get to hear it. They can come by. I've got T-shirts for sale and, all that kind of thing. I've got a limited run of 30 USB cards that are customized for Forkfest and Porkfest.
Very cool.
That even say that contain not only the 3-song EP, but all 3 music videos. And then there's some extra stuff, too, some random jams with people and just some bonus files, right?
Awesome.
Extra stuff like you would expect to get. And it's exclusive for this. The EP doesn't actually drop until Independence Day. So that's when it's available on Amazon and Spotify and Apple, iTunes, all that crap. Doesn't happen until Independence Day. And if that's how you're going to get it, you're going to get the 3-song EP, but none of the extras. So I wanted to do something special, particularly for Forkfest. But also for the Porcupine Freedom Festival, because, Forkfest is a fork of that. And so folks who come and meet me and attend in person, you get something extra that nobody else is getting.
Very cool, man. And that's happening at RV 47, right next to us, right?
I've got some signs and stuff I'll put up.
That was another indicator that there was something wrong with me, is that, since the raid, my desire I've had to force myself to make any music at all.
Ooh,
and even then I almost never complete them. The closest thing I got to getting a song completed was All for One and All for Nothing, and it everything had to be retracked again after I recorded it, because I just sort of did the layout the first few times, and I got the song composed, I guess is the best way to put it. I got it composed, but then I did nothing with it, and I couldn't find, even though there's so much bubbling in me that I want to say, I don't know how to take all of that and convert it into anything, because there's just too much of it.
Right.
So that's been a frustrating experience. Like I want to do this, I want to do that, but there's so much in the way that I don't even know how to begin. And this is the point of the therapy, right? But no. I mean, the therapists even argued that instead of sending me to prison, the judge should just keep me in therapy. And that's probably the best thing for me, they argued. But of course, the judge did what judges do, and he makes his own decision. And in 10 days, I will be, in almost exactly 10 days, I will have checked into some federal prison to spend the next 18 months. And that's another one of those things where you're constantly waiting on something. And I know when I'm in prison, I will be constantly waiting on my release. I'm going to try not to be, and I'm going to write. I say I'm going to write, but I know I haven't had the inspiration to write. I force myself to write here and there, but once I'm in there, I'm not going to have anything else to do, so I might force myself to do it every single day, and I may even work through all of these things. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I say I'm going to write, and that's generally my plan, but I may get in there and have the same issue that I've had with making music or whatever for the last 2 years, which is just that my heart isn't there.
Yeah.
Because my heart is broken,
yeah.
I guess. Very frustrating, but I'm looking forward to it being over. And so that will more or less be on my mind the entire time that I'm in prison. But now for the next 10 days, there's a countdown timer here.
There is. I noticed that. And I understand why you did it, but it also saddens me that it's here.
Yeah. A lot of people think, how is your mental health taking that or whatever? But honestly, the truth is, it doesn't make a difference, right? Whether that countdown timer is there or not, I know that in 10 days, man, I'm going to federal prison.
Yeah.
That's not something you just forget about.
Yeah.
Right. That's always there. It's always in the back of my mind. And the countdown timer there isn't going to remind me of it any more than I'm already being reminded of it. So to me, it's just a conversational piece. It's just a conversation starter. And it hasn't worked because everyone who is here so far already is well aware of what it's counting down to. And, I counted down to PorkFest and ForkFest, and I do that every year because I like coming here, and it's a great time, right? But this year, it's got this weird bittersweet aspect to it, where I love it, but as soon as it ends, I'm going to prison. Not as soon as it ends, right? Like it ends that Sunday or the 25th. Or the 24th? I don't remember what day. Yes, the 24th.
Yeah. Well, 25th is the Sunday, so.
The 25th is the Monday.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
The 26th is the Tuesday, and that's what I got to deal with, and I don't want to spend
behind for some reason. I thought it was anyway. Go ahead.
I only remember because I know the 26th is a Tuesday because for whatever reason, everything that the judge scheduled to happen in my case, he scheduled for a Tuesday, and I don't know why, but it was always a Tuesday.
Is that a see you next Tuesday?
I guess, but. Like, if a hearing got put off, it was always postponed to a future Tuesday.
Yeah.
And with Ian, it seems to be Thursday, if I remember correctly. But I don't know why they do it that way. Right?
Yeah.
But they do. And the only reason I'm out right now is to officiate this wedding.
Right.
Because it was in the letters that were written, and it was in my attorney's argument that, hey, you shouldn't send Aria to prison because she's got all these things to do.
It's so weird, though, that, that was a consideration for the state. Like, I would have expected the state to be like, we don't care. You're going in on this state anyway, right? To have, no... I can't even describe it as sympathy, but to have no that there was any consideration for that at all. It is very unlike the state.
That's true. I mean, but weddings are important to people, right? And those are life-changing events.
Yeah, probably important to the state because it's another way for them to have more names on their database.
So I don't know. I haven't really given any thought why the judge really cared. Obviously, it served my interest to keep me out of jail because the Bureau of Prisons, right? Dude, it gets so frustrating talking to people sometimes because they Google stuff.
Yeah.
And then they go, hey, I guess you didn't know about this, but Biden made a trans policy, so you're going to be fine. Okay, yeah, I will ignore what my highly paid attorney has to say about this and listen to the guy who did a Google search.
Yeah, and if I know you already were well aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I have spent more time reading about this stuff than anyone else not going to prison.
Right.
Right? Because this is my life. It's my prison sentence. I want to know what I'm getting into. The only thing I haven't done is read the actual orientation handbook of any of the prisons. I've skimmed some of them, but until I know what prison I'm going to be in, I don't want that clutter in my head because it varies.
Right.
And I don't want to know what the orientation is at this other prison that I'm not going to.
You want to know the specifics.
Right. And I'm not going to know that until the very end. But I lost my train of thought because there goes Matt Roach on his dirt bike. And that's awesome. Congrats, Matt, and congrats on the wedding. Oh, but yeah, so they wanted to keep me out so that the Bureau of Prisons could figure out how to deal with a trans person. Because under Trump, you just went to whatever prison you were assigned at birth, right? And that's pretty much what it is under Biden, too.
Yeah.
But Biden created a committee. So don't worry, everyone. There's a committee involved. They're going to study things and defer things to a council, and the council is going to vote and defer it to a different committee, and that committee has a subcommittee that will send it to the subcommittee of the subcommittee, and at some point, someone, we're 2 months into this, by the way, will figure out what damn prison they want to send me to.
Or they won't, and they'll postpone it, and you won't have to go for longer.
I don't think they can do that.
Okay.
I
mean, they're
I don't know.
the state.
Yeah, that's true. They can do whatever they want, right? I don't think they would do that, though. I think they would just have me say, okay, well, report to Cheshire County while we figure out what to do with you. And I don't understand why they're not doing that either. Like a lot of county jails throughout the United States, they do have federal prisoners in them when they're not serving long sentences. Like if you're serving 12 months, it's too much trouble to transport you to a prison and have you there for I mean, and if you're sentenced to 12 months, you're probably going to be out in 6 to 9.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of trouble to go through for someone who's going to be out in 6 to 9 months. So they usually just send you to a local county jail and you spend your time there.
Outsourcing.
Yeah. I said they might do that. They're like, okay, all right, we haven't figured this out yet. So report to Cheshire County Jail and just chill there for a little while we figure this out. But like, guys, if you haven't figured this out by now, and again, we're almost 2 months into this, 2 months since I was sentenced.
Right.
And they haven't contacted me. People have been asking since the week of my sentencing, where are you going? Have you found out where you're going yet? Guys, it's the government. How did libertarians forget this? They're not efficient. They're not in a hurry.
They have no incentive.
They are doing this with all of the passion and excitement of the DMV.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
If not less.
Right. And so and we don't know what's going to happen, right, with me. Honestly, both situations suck. Women's prison has their own issues, especially the Connecticut Women's Federal Prison. I can't remember the name of it right now, Danbury.
Yeah.
It's got a pretty bad reputation for a minimum security prison camp. And, like, this is the place that Orange is the New Black was based off of. And and the girl who wrote Orange is the New Black, I don't remember. The book may have been the same name. I don't remember. But like, she described people being, having used tampons snuck into their food, having her head forcefully shaved by other inmates. Like, people had this idea that I'm going to go to female prison and it's going to be like pillow fights and lingerie.
Country club, right? Yeah, you're going to get massages and pedicures and a eucalyptus steam bath.
Right, it's prison. And it's every bit as vicious as any men's prison. Yeah. And I'm not looking forward to the possibility of going to it. But then men's prison, not any better. I honestly think it would be easier for me to go to a men's prison.
Wow.
I think I would get less pushback and I would be more likely to be left alone. But because
I've known a couple of women who have been to women's prison, and they both say that they think that women's prison, federal prison that is more vicious than men's prison. And I was surprised by that coming from women.
I'm not, but neither situation is good. But that does seem to be what people think. Oh, you can go to a women's prison and just have sex for the next 18 months or whatever. Well, no, first of all, that's a terrible idea. You do something like that, you're probably going to end up with more time.
What's the old joke? He couldn't get laid in a women's prison with a fistful of pardons.
Well, you shouldn't get laid in a women's prison because it just creates so many possible issues, right? There's possible issues with jealousy, and you're not allowed to have relationships in prison, right? They frown upon that. They know what's going to happen, right? But like, you're not supposed to do that.
I'm having flashbacks to Half-Baked. I'm somebody's bitch.
Oh, I missed that movie. There's something else I've been wanting to watch recently.
Squirrel Master came out of nowhere.
It's amazing that you mentioned that. They mentioned that in last night's episode of Free Talk Live when they were discussing Bob Saget because of the one scene.
Yeah. Did you ever for a Coke?
And I knew that Bob Saget was in that scene, right? But it still wasn't until years later that I saw Bob Saget doing stand-up that I realized just how bad his mouth really is. And they were bringing this up in the context of Drag Queen Story Hour and drag performers and it's obvious when you stop to think about it, like Bob Saget, this family-friendly guy who did America's Home Videos and Full House and all this other crap. Yes, he does plenty of family-friendly content, but his adult content is brutal.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, and he's got a potty mouth.
Yeah, and but none of that adult content means that he isn't family friendly on America's Home Videos. You don't have people out there going, oh no, we can't let our kids watch what's the show, Full House, because I saw that Bob Saget stand up and that was just not okay. Right? But when it's a drag queen who does a video where she's like stripping or whatever, suddenly, oh no, we can't have our kids around this because we saw that video. But that's not the way you assess anything else. And I brought up the example of movies once upon a time. Just because there are some movies that are rated R doesn't mean that all movies are unacceptable for children, right? This is an obvious thing. Different types of entertainment have different categories, some of which are adult friendly and some of which aren't. I would let my kids listen to metal, but I would understand why some people would be like, 5-year-old son, I don't know that you should be listening to Korn and Limp Bizkit right now, right?
Okay.
I wouldn't have an issue with it, but sure, it's a lot of foul language, and they don't know when it's okay to say things. I get it. I wouldn't agree.
You could apply the same thing to I'm old school, so gangster rap, right? There's a lot of things that people will sort of, I don't want my kid listening to that, but they can listen to this other thing, and it's worse, lyrically than anything metal could be.
But I get it. You want your 5-year-old kid to watch Pocahontas. Don't watch Pocahontas. That's trash. You want them to watch The Lion King, though, and you don't want them to watch Friday the 13th, because it's just one is made for kids and one isn't, and that's totally fine. So anyway, I don't remember how we got into the subject of Bob Saget, but it's not super important anyway. And
he's a funny comedian. It was Half-Baked.
It was Half-Baked. Yeah. But I don't remember what we were talking about before we even got into that, because we are here at Fork Fest. I'm not looking into any show prep at the moment, but we have some, of course, to talk about. In general, we're just talking about the Fork Fest and the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
If we could change topics for just a moment, I wanted to mention the Green Monkey.
That's right. You had brought that up.
Yeah.
What is that?
There was something circulating on the internets, the Twitters and that kind of thing, about some DNA of the green monkey being found in the COVID vaccines.
What is the green monkey?
So the green monkey is a species of monkey from Africa, I believe. And it is sort of famous, at least in my mind, during the OG AIDS epidemic coming out of the 80s.
Okay.
Now, the reason that stuck in my mind is because I went to an all, it was like the high school put on in the auditorium kind of a thing. It was everybody had to attend kind of a thing, and it was a presentation about the AIDS epidemic and like what you could do, how it affects you, education of like, well, you can get it from this, but not from that, and it's only sexually transmitted, and, all this kind of stuff. And they went into great detail at this presentation back in the 80s about how the belief was that AIDS originated with the green monkey, and that somehow it transduced itself from the simian, the monkey population, into the human population. They implied, of course, that somebody, had some sort of an interaction with this monkey. And so...
Right, I think I remember that. They suggested that someone, fornicated with an ape.
And what happened at this
ape.
particular seminar that I was at is my friend Al, who was a bold dude, metalhead. He was really like, I think today he would be an anarchist. Okay. I'd like to think that anyway. But anyway, he was the one, there was a Q&A section, and he was the first guy to stand up, all like, me, like Horseshack style. And they go, yes, you, sir, what is your question? And he said, I just have one question. Who effed the green monkey? And the whole place erupted in laughter, and the speaker...
No, did he say the actual word?
He said the actual word, yeah.
Hardcore.
And
nice.
then, of course, he was escorted out immediately
Obviously.
after that because of the type of environment that he was in. And, of course, the speaker just sort of downplayed. He's like, well, we don't know exactly how it jumped from the monkey population to the human population, this, that, and the other thing. And so that stuck in my head because it was funny. It was hilarious to my friend Al stand up and ask this question that was on everybody's mind who was listening to this presentation. You couldn't help but think about that question. So he asked a question that nobody else was going to ask anyway and didn't get an answer. And so now years later, there's this thing going around on Twitter, which there was an AP News article that said, no, it's not true that there was green monkey, it's S40, there's some designation to the green monkey virus that's found in the COVID vaccine. And they're
you
like,
can
no,
definitely trust the Associated Press, right?
Right. And like this article is debunking, saying like, no, it's not the virus, but there is this little piece of the simian DNA that is in there. So the story is not exactly untrue. The AP article is trying to debunk it with a headline, but then also go on to say, well, yeah, there actually is a piece of this DNA that can be found in the COVID vaccine, but it's not the virus itself.
And that's really a problem because a lot of people only read headlines.
Right.
And then it doesn't matter if the article itself completely disputes what the headline says, they're going to go on believing whatever they think the headline suggests the article contains.
So the green monkey rears its ugly head again, this time during the COVID vaccine.
At least so far, it didn't give anyone HIV. There's more coming up here from PorcFest, so you can come hang out with us at RV46. It's Free Talk Live.
Negotiation isn't just something union leaders and sports agents do. Your entire day is a series of negotiations. If you have young children, you know that. In fact, your kids can teach you a lot about negotiating with grown-ups. According to the world's greatest negotiator, Herb Cohen, author of You Can Negotiate Anything. Herb says that kids understand the process of decision-making within an organization. When one parent says no, they'll ask the other. And Cohen says children persist and persevere. And like smart negotiators of all ages, kids know that no is an opening bargaining position. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
wanted to play this song a few weeks ago. Like, just sitting around my house, I was like, I haven't played that in a while. Let's play it. And like, I don't remember how to play it. It was a song this is Broken Man by Rebel Sync, and we played it at Fork Fest here 3 years ago.
I keep forgetting the name. People will call into like Beer Talk Live. Hey, what was the name of the band of the intro music? And I've said it so many times, but I can never remember. Rebel Inc.
Rebel Sync, yep. Or Rebel Inc. I don't know.
Yeah, it's singular.
Okay. And I wanted to play it, and I remember it was tuned down to C sharp, or D flat, whatever you want to call it.
Didn't we play it in
It's
drop
drop D, but it's down half a set. No, I used a separate guitar for it.
Oh, okay.
To make things a little bit easier. And it was a lot of fun to play, but I haven't played it since, right? That 3 years ago was the last time I played that song, and I don't remember. I remember that solo part at the beginning because it was just 2 notes and some bends. But that's it. I wish I could remember more.
If it makes you feel any better, I totally botched the lyrics during the performance. So
nice. Well, I botched the whole show. So.
We got at some point, and I had the lyrics written down. And I was trying hard to memorize them, before the show because that was the one song that I didn't have completely memorized. And so we got to some point, and I remember just like looking around at you guys while you were still playing and going, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be singing right here, if anything. I'm like, where are we in this song? And so I just sort of ad-libbed a little bit, and we eventually ended the song, and everybody was like, yay! So it all...
Yeah, no one noticed.
Yeah, no one notices these things when you're on stage. But when you're on stage and you're in the moment, these little tiny moments of seconds seem to take forever.
They can, yes.
You're like, oh my gosh, I've been screwing this part up for 5 minutes. It's like 5 seconds.
That solo for Enter Sandman is the one that sticks out most in my mind because that was where I completely lost the ability to see. And I was just...
Right, we were playing. It was dark. We only had tiki torches for lights. We had no stage lighting whatsoever.
And I did not put nearly enough oil in the tiki torch that was on my side. I thought it lasted longer than that, but like halfway through the show, it was almost completely gone. And by the time Enter Sandman goes, I was just a black silhouette. Going off of touch.
Listening back to some of the video footage that somebody captured, I don't like the footage that was captured. It was, a crappy cam and that kind of a thing. So, of course, it doesn't sound as good as it could have.
Well, I mean, we put it together in 3 weeks. So.
Right. But, I am impressed with how all 3 of us were able to pull it off without being able to see.
That's true.
The drummer probably had the easiest time because there's, the chrome rims around each of the drums.
Yeah.
So any little bit of light might have illuminated the drums just enough for the drummer to see. But you and I know I couldn't see my fretboard at all.
I couldn't see anything.
So I was what I call press and pray. I was pressing on the strings, praying that I landed on the appropriate fret because I could not see the dots at all. So it's all just muscle memory, hoping that I remembered the riff appropriately. And by hook or by crook, we pulled it off. So it was impressive.
And it came out good. I mean, it wasn't the worst show I've ever played. I had to give that some thought because it was not a good show, but it was not the worst I've ever played.
Not the worst I've ever played either.
And it was fun, and people seemed to enjoy it.
And for pulling it together as fast as we did, right? Yep. I mean, it was a good time.
I hate that I wasn't my GNX3 was giving me problems then, and I've since learned what it was that it was doing, but like some of the settings, like some of the gain was turned up on this particular channel and not that channel, and I was using channel 21 when we practiced and when we did the sound checks, and then for the performance, I ended up on channel 22 or whatever. Miscellaneous little things like that completely screwed things up. But all in all, and the only reason that was the case was because I was really unfamiliar. I hadn't used that amp anyway. So it was all, but it was good and it was a lot of fun. And, I wish I could remember how to play that song, but I've mostly moved to playing bass lately, right?
That's what you were saying, yeah. Are you doing some slapping and popping?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to play bass, play it like a bass, right? Yeah. I recorded one video, someone was like, hey, are you using a pick? I was like, why would I use a pick to play bass?
Oh,
no.
Thank you. There are some types of music that, I think playing bass with a pick is required if you're not what I call an active bass player, right? A passive bass player, a song that requires passive bass playing is where the bassist literally follows the guitar. Maybe there's an occasional variance here and there just to let you know, hey, there's some bass here, right? Outside of the low
Breaking
frequencies.
Benjamin or someone like that.
Yeah, or there might be an occasional, one pop on the bass, but mostly like what I call passive bass playing. A pick is just fine for that stuff. But when it comes to active bass playing, where the bass player is playing something fundamentally different than the guitar player or players, then I think fingers and slap and pop are required for that type of music.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I've never found much use in having a bass player just play along with whatever the guitars are doing, because I tend to put a lot of bottom end on my guitars anyway, so it's blue on black. Yeah. It's like you're just going to play the root note of whatever I'm playing. I can just turn my bass knob up a little bit and get pretty much the same effect. So I wish I could play Primus, and I can play some Primus, but nowhere near as well as Les Claypool, obviously.
Nobody can play near as well as Les Claypool, except Les Claypool.
Yeah. I listened to his song Highball with the Devil recently.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that particular song before, and a friend said it to me, was like, hey, I want you to learn how to play this. I said, hey, that's 2 bass guitars at once. No, thank you. And like even trying to play one of the bass lines, it's just so hard. And then I watch people like Davey504 and Charlie Bertad. I don't know his name. They're YouTubers, and they're just phenomenal. They give Les Claypool a run for his money. Definitely. These guys are good.
Yeah.
And it's amazing watching them play. Like, I'm not that.
Yeah.
I was not interested in bass. I always played my 4-string when I played bass because that was just what I knew. And then I was like, I want to play my 5-string because it sounds better. It's got a better tone. It's fuller. It's brighter for whatever reason. Even though they're the same make and model, but one is a 4-string and one is a 5-string.
They
Go
both
figure.
same pickups?
Yeah.
Active?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah.
But so I asked on Facebook, give me some good bands to play along with. And someone said, well, Korn. I was like, duh, Korn. Yeah. Because I wanted something that was more advanced than like Breaking Benjamin. I don't even know a Breaking. You could not pay me to learn a Breaking Benjamin song.
I don't know any of their music.
But some sort of generic, easy to play bass song is what I'm thinking of, and I wanted something between that and Primus.
Yeah.
Right. And usually Tool falls in about that spot, but I get so sick of playing Tool. Tool can be fun to play because they have neat riffs and weird timings and stuff, but like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And there's only so many times I can play Schism or 46 and 2 or whatever before I want to blow my brains out.
Sober. Right?
Yeah. Sober's one I never learned on bass because it's so easy. It's like just 2 notes through the whole song. It's like, no, thank you. So 46 and 2, Schism, those are generally funner to play with. But still, that's only like 2 songs. Then they're like, all right, well, I need something else to play. So someone suggested Korn. And like, duh. Because that's exactly what I'm looking for. It's a lot of slapping. Not much plucking, but a lot of slapping and a lot of style. Like, when you hear Korn, that it's Korn, and it's the bassist that makes it that way.
Yeah, it's true.
And one of my friends that I worked with, he's a musician. He thought it was the drummer making that noise. Like he records. He's got music that he wrote on Spotify, and we were having a conversation about this. And he asked me, he's like, "Yeah, what is the drummer doing to make that noise?" I went, "Haha, yeah, that's good." He's like, "Oh, what is he doing?" I was like, "You poor guy. How do you not know that's the bass?"
Yeah, it's kind of like, in ways, being a musician resembles being a libertarian in that not everybody knows what the hell you're talking about when you talk about it, right? I take it for granted that I know the difference between an electric guitar, a bass guitar, and a drum kit, right? And keyboards. But like some people, when they listen to music, all they do is they listen for how it feels to them. They're not discerning what instrument is what. They might not even know what instrument is doing what. They just know that when they hear this song, they like it. And it makes them feel good in some way, or feel bad, or they identify with it in some way, shape, or form. And so libertarianism is similar to that because, well, you and I can sit down and talk about things that me and somebody who's not a libertarian and never heard of libertarian philosophy, we can't sit down and have that same conversation until they get up to speed.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So the same thing with
but
like
still,
musicians.
This kid was a musician.
Oh, well, then that's, and then there's no excuse.
It reminds me of this old drummer that I had like years ago who thought in the Tool song right into, like toward the end, the bass drum and the bass guitar, the bass guitar slaps the open D at the same time that the drummer kicks the bass drum, and it sounds really good. And the drummer that I was with thought that it was like this ball and chain effect that the drummer was using. I was like, nope, that's also just the bass.
Oh, I see.
But anyway, so I started playing a lot of Korn lately, and I discovered that bass is actually a lot of fun because it's got such a different vibe to it.
It does. It's a unique
guitar.
instrument in that respect.
And it's hard to play bass without being kind of funky with it, right? And
I love funk music too, particularly for the bass lines.
in just a few months of practicing bass, I was writing bass licks in my songs that I was working on that are never going to be completed now that I would never have that I would never even have conceived 2 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. And that's an interesting development, right? Like, and I've been listening to a lot of different stuff now. A lot of different stuff is influencing me that wouldn't have been influencing me the last time I was really writing music. Like Poppy is such a weird chick, and I want to like Poppy, but I hate a lot of her stuff. But her sound is incredible, right? It's almost entirely driven by bass and drums.
Yeah.
And this is also true of like Falling in Reverse and a few other of those very, very new metal type of bands.
Well,
the guitars are there, but they're so minor in the mix that this was the case with the more recent songs I was working on, was that they weren't driven by the guitar anymore.
Yeah.
Which is how my music has always been. It's
Right.
like the guitar is the driving force and everything else just goes with it. But here it was the guitar was going along with it and everything was going forward at once. And it was a lot more fun.
I really like that you're having or experiencing, musical growth at this particular period in your life.
Yeah.
I like that something else has sort of caught your attention and you're exploring it and you're allowing yourself to grow with it musically, particularly, with all the crap that's hanging over your head and all that kind of stuff. I think it's important for you to not ignore that.
I suspect when I get out of prison and when I get back into a stable place and I can get God willing, I can end up somewhere where I can rebuild my music studio because I still got all the stuff, right? I just don't have the actual studio anymore. But I'm hoping I can get somewhere where I can get my studio back together because I'm going to have all of this crap because this will be behind me at that point. And I will be able to look back and write about it. And I'm sort of looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Because one of the last things I said with my therapist before our final meeting ended was, I feel a lot of crap right now, and I don't even know how to begin to decipher it. And she's like, I hate that you said that because we just ran out of time. And like, we were just getting into the good stuff. And I was like, well, my sentencing is tomorrow. So hopefully we'll talk again next week.
Right.
So, I mean, a lot to unpack there, and I'm looking forward to that. And I say I'm looking forward to it, and I am. I'm looking forward to having all of this behind me, and that's why I'm not appealing the sentencing. Plus, appealing the sentencing wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
I've got no grounds to appeal the sentence. If the judge went over the sentencing guidelines, we could have appealed the plea agreement and got all that taken care of. But he went way under the guidelines, so it's like, I don't know if they could do this, but like we appeal it and they go, yeah, the judge under-sentenced you. You should have been sentenced to 36 months, not 18. Go back to prison. Like, I don't know if they can do that.
Nobody wants that.
It's the government. They can do whatever they want, right? But we are having a great time here. It's a beautiful day. It's actually a bit warm now, but that's how it is here at Fork Fest. And there's people steadily rolling in. There's people setting up. And there's a dome down here at the bottom of the hill that I'm tremendously curious about because
Is it fully built now? I can't really see behind me.
The framework is mostly
They've been making
built.
progress on it.
Yeah, it's curious. I've always wondered. Now, I know a few years ago when they built this, Stephen and Derek stacked a bunch of picnic tables on top of each other and then climbed up them in order to build the upper parts of it. But they don't appear. Oh, they have a ladder. That's easier.
Is this the same dome, do you think?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know what they're doing, but it was initially the Somalia pirate ship, I think is what they called it. And, of course, that was back when Will Coley was DJing it and before Stephen himself had started DJing. It was a lot of fun.
Right.
Then it became the Big Gay Dance Party. And then, of course, Derek and Stephen left after the March the 16th raid. I think that day, or if it wasn't that day, it was the day after, they had packed up all their stuff and gotten out of the U.S. And Coinbase and Binance should have figured this out, too. They didn't.
Right.
But it was obvious that the federal government was going to come after cryptocurrency. And it breaks my heart to look around and see this because, I am going to prison for fighting in this particular war.
Yeah.
And we lost this war. I hate it, but we did.
Well, and anybody who thinks that the United States of America is the land of the free, the home of the brave, I urge you to take a look at what is going on in the crypto universe. The persecution that the government has, they have it out for anybody cryptocurrency. Exchanges, developers, anybody involved in that space trying to make a go at startup companies, you're all under threat because the government has finally, in some way, figured out that cryptocurrency is a direct threat to their existence.
Yeah, Gensler, the chair of the CEO
screw that guy.
of the SEC, he said this, right? He said, you don't need any cryptocurrency because we have the U.S. dollar.
We have the dollar. It's already digital.
Yeah, it's
which
like
we've been saying for
Right.
10 years now.
But that was the quiet part. I'm amazed that he had the...
I mean, not that we don't need crypto. We haven't been saying that. I'm saying we've been saying that the dollar is already digital. There's not enough actual physical cash to account for all of the dollars that are in existence in people's bank
only
accounts.
3% of the dollars in existence actually is physical currency, right?
Yeah, so 97% of it is virtual, is digital.
That's why I love ForkFest and the Porcupine Freedom Festival. You can actually use cryptocurrency here. I can't. I look forward to being able to use cryptocurrency again more than you know, man. I miss scanning that little QR code. And it's such a minor thing, right? But the cryptocurrency was in many ways like my main piece of activism.
Yeah.
Right? That was what I did. And that was what I promoted. I was out there every day doing something in regard to cryptocurrency. And now for more than 2 years, I haven't been able to touch the stuff. Yeah. And I hate it. And I've watched Keen sort of lose its status as the crypto mecca because of this. And that sucks. I used to do the crypto tours. As I mentioned, I'm heavily into this cryptocurrency thing.
Yeah.
And I was the one who did the crypto tours when people came to Keen and they wanted someone to show them around. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
And that continued on. The Verge had me do that for them. Someone who visited from the United Kingdom had me do it for them. And there have been a few crypto tours since the raid, but it's such a sad, hollow, empty shell of what it was. It's like, well, if you look way down there, there's a business that accepts Bitcoin. And if you look way down there on the other side, there's one, and that one used to, and that one used to, and that one used to, and that one used to.
I forget to mention this all the time, but here at ForkFest and PorkFest, I have T-shirts and this EP thing. I am not taking FRNs.
Nice.
That is, I've said it on the radio a couple of times. I'm horrible at promoting my own stuff, so I don't know how much I've done, but I am refusing FRNs. I will take gold, silver, gold backs, cryptocurrency. All of those things are available option for you. If for whatever reason you're here and you're trying to buy something from me and all you have is FRNs, turn around
and come see me because I have gold I will sell you.
And ask somebody. That's there are so many people here or going to be
just
here.
Come to me. I need to sell the gold because I got a $5,000 fine to pay. So forget all those other people.
Yeah.
Find me. Because I got plenty of gold that I am selling. I'm not intentionally selling it anymore because I stopped by on the way up here to pay the fine, and that sucked. But I was driving by Concord anyway, so killed two birds with one stone, and I had to pay $2,500 of it at least before going to prison.
Yeah.
And I don't know
or else what? They're gonna throw you in prison?
They'll probably hold me in prison longer.
Oh, okay.
So
because I was just can they really increase your punishment somehow? Can they threaten you with jail if they're already going?
It's contempt of court if you don't obey. So
what if you were poor and couldn't pay?
Well, they shouldn't have fined me, right?
Agreed.
My attorney said the entire time that they weren't going to fine me because it was silly for them to. But they fined me anyway. And again, even that was half of the fine that I was supposed to be given. So consistently, the judge took whatever I was supposed to have done to me and he cut it in half. And I don't know what that says, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, so I stopped by on the way up here and paid part of that fine. It was frustrating. I had talked to my attorney again because my attorney has an office right there by the courthouse, which is super convenient. So I was like, hey, I got to stop by and pay this fine, and I've got a dog and 2 cats with me, so I need to leave the car running. So I don't want to just park on the street, right?
Yeah.
So can I park in your driveway? He was like, yeah, of course, blah, 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 blah. And then he mentioned to me my studio equipment that the FBI has that they took from me on March the 16th. They took a bunch of stuff, but they took out
They
of
took
my...
like your compressors and gates and stuff?
No, they took my computer and an external hard drive.
Yeah.
And the reason the external hard drive is significant is because it has the only remaining copies of all the music I wrote before coming to New Hampshire.
Oh.
And there are a few songs that I have in other places and I've since re-downloaded, but like the full collection is on that external hard drive and all the music I was working on. Plus, back then I was doing something called Bad Movie Club, where some friends and I would hang out. We would watch bad movies and record it, and then we edit it and make it entertaining and throw it online. All of those clips, all of those unfinished episodes, all of those unfinished songs that I was working on, all of that stuff is on that studio computer and on that external hard drive. And they took it. And my attorney and I pointed out to them, to the prosecutors, hey, this stuff, it says here in the discovery that it just contains a bunch of music files and nothing related to cryptocurrency, so can Aria have this stuff back?
Right.
And the prosecutor said, yeah, we don't have any problem with that. Yeah, just contact the FBI. And so they got that worked out. My attorney was supposed to meet with the FBI agent on next Thursday. He's going to bring it to me.
Yeah.
And then he didn't. And he followed up, and it turns out that they don't want to give it back to me because of the raid on the studio in 2016. I wasn't even in New Hampshire when this happened.
What does that have to do?
They said because of the lawsuit filed by the Shire Free Church in Ian against the FBI, they won't relinquish my stuff, right?
What does one have to do with the other?
It has nothing. It's punitive. That's all, right? They're being petty because Ian is suing them. They're not going to give me my stuff back. That's all it is.
That's lame.
Yeah, that's the government, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, this is what the government does. Not only do they, murder people, not only do they oppress people, not only do they tell people what to do and how to do it, but they continue the harassment no matter what avenue.
Like that doesn't even have anything to do. I lived in Mississippi at the time that raid happened.
Yeah.
And this computer, the prosecutors have admitted, the FBI has admitted, everyone has admitted that.
Look at the dates on the file creation. Right?
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with cryptocurrency. There's nothing about cryptocurrency anywhere related to that.
Yeah.
Like it had its own separate Telegram account. Like I specifically kept the two things separated.
Right.
That was just the Amduzia's music studio. It had its own separate Telegram account, so it didn't even have that.
Right.
There was nothing crypto related on there. It was just music and for video and audio production. But no, because Ian is suing them, they don't want to give me my stuff back.
That's
Even though
dumb.
the prosecutors know that it's no use in the case against me, even though the prosecutors know that it's got nothing to do with 2016 and anything on it has nothing to do with 2016. They can't even search for it in the context of stuff they were looking for in 2016. There's nothing on it except audio and music, audio and video files. But like, it's completely and totally separate.
Yeah.
And the FBI knows it. I know it. My attorney knows it. The prosecutors themselves know it, and we're willing to give it back. But the FBI is petty, and because Ian is suing them, they're refusing to do it.
Yeah, well, and the FBI is an organization that, like the rest of the federal government, needs to go the F away.
That would be great, but give me my stuff back first. I was surprised that they gave me my DVR back that contained footage of the raid, and I was surprised that they gave Ian's back as well. Now, mine ended up not being nearly as exciting, so I wanted to release mine, but mine was very dull. And, I was working on it. I had extracted the video, and I was getting it together and all that. But then Ian got his and released his, and his was so much more exciting. I was like, it would be pointless for me to release this. So I ended up just getting rid of it because it was useless. But I was surprised they gave that back without wiping it, right? That doesn't seem like what they would do.
Right.
But they sure enough did. They returned it without wiping it. And all the footage was there.
I think they want to showcase their brutality.
Well, they certainly did that. And the videos are quite horrific. If you haven't seen them, go to freekeep.com and look for FBI Raid. You'll find it. But there is more coming up here. The FBI almost certainly here as well. And they can go screw themselves. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
There's going to be no food by February.
Oh, that seems a little extreme. I find that hard to believe.
Watch it happen. Hope you find Christ.
Oh, good luck, buddy. Thanks.
What really turned me away from religion was the fact that most of them are so intolerant and nasty.
What do you
Your
mean?
life will suck unless you find Jesus. Well, I had Jesus a long time ago, and he didn't really do anything for me, so I got away from that.
Right, and I can tell you that if you want to have that attitude with people, like,
Good
well,
luck
you better find Christ, or you're going to burn in hell.
Yeah.
Then
Good luck converting people.
Yeah, I really want to hang out with people like you, there, Keith. I really want to hang out with people like you. So I'm sorry to those good Christians out there listening that aren't like Keith. But it's the loudmouths like Keith that do real damage to your religion and how people feel about it.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Weekend Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, remembering the British actress and politician Glenda Jackson, whose death was announced on Thursday at the age of 87. In an acting career that lasted 6 decades, she won 2 Oscars, 3 Emmys, 2 BAFTAs and a Tony Award, honoured for films including Women in Love, A Touch of Class and Queen Elizabeth I in the BBC's Elizabeth R. In her 50s, she turned to politics, becoming a firebrand parliamentarian for Britain's Labour Party. She returned to the stage at the age of 80, and in an appearance last year at the British Film Institute, was asked if she worried that opportunities for women in acting and politics were slipping backwards.
I never really noticed it going forward, but I'm... But I say that more as a female than as a working class female, I have to say. And we're still looking at a situation where contemporary dramatists find women boring. I mean, they are rarely, if ever, the central driving engine of what the writer has decided to explore. And I find that utterly bewildering. Well, I don't find it bewildering, I just bitch about it a lot.
Glenda Jackson recently completed a new film alongside Michael Caine. On Thursday, he described her as one of our greatest movie actresses. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denslow reporting.
A new report by the Department of Health and Human Services has found that the average male is 4,000% less effective in fights than he imagines, casting powerful doubts on many men's claims that they could take someone out in 2 seconds or smash a guy's face in with their fist.
On average, men describing hypothetical fights overestimated their level of combat skill by a factor of 40, with 80% of males incorrectly predicting they could mess a guy up real bad with one solid punch to the jaw. During actual physical altercations, however, these men were statistically more likely to end up hurting themselves, or, most commonly, trying to diffuse the tension by nervously saying, "Hey man, let's all just calm down, okay?" before any fighting even came to pass.
Researchers discovered that men were significantly weaker than they verbally indicated while chatting with friends in bars and locker rooms, and that men who were 90% sure they could tear someone a new tended to succeed in fewer than 1 in 10 fights.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live from Rogers Campground here in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire, celebrating Pork Fest number 7, leading into the Porcupine Freedom Festival, the 20th Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm surprised that Pork Fest has existed so long relative to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, right? Like the 7-to-20 ratio is almost, I mean, it's a third as young, just about, but like that's longer than I would have expected. But my first Porcupine Freedom Festival was the same year that Fork Fest started. So
okay.
That makes it super easy for me to remember certain things.
Yeah.
I was surprised recently. There was an entire an entire year that I came here, and then returned to Mississippi that I have no recollection of. I thought that I came here the first year, and then I came here the second year, and on the third year I moved.
Okay.
No. I came here 1 year, then I came here the second year, then I came here the third year, and the fourth year, and then I moved. I moved on the fourth year, not the third. And so I'm like...
You lost a year in there somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't remember it at all. Right, I remember the first year where I slept over there in Agora Valley at the Muslims for Liberty tent. helping, Will Coley out with stuff. And I remember the second year where I slept further away down here on a campsite that I shared with his mom.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the year after that, but there was another year. And then the year after that, I stayed at the Cabot. And since then, I've been staying at the motel here at Rogers Campground.
Right.
But like, there was another year there that I came here that I don't remember.
Huh.
And that's weird. I know I came here. I
Drugs?
didn't skip it. I mean, I don't even remember driving here, though. I mean, definitely drugs, right? But I don't remember even driving here. And I wasn't on drugs while driving here.
Sure, yeah.
And it's just, it's so strange to me. And like, I don't know how it could have happened. I don't know how it could have happened. The first year, I drove Will and his family's van up here. The second year, I rode with, wait, hold on. I don't remember any of this. Because I'm sitting there, I'm like, I remember, the first year I came back with Will's mom in her truck. I remember that. But how did I get back the year after that? Because I only brought my car here once, and I never took it
projection?
back. I mean, how the hell how many drugs did I do, right? I don't know. And I don't remember, allegedly, right? And I don't remember any of that. Now I'm really surprised because that first year, Will and his family stayed an additional time. They stayed until the fireworks festival because they were told that more people were coming in and they could make more money, and they went canoeing and stuff like that around here with Jessica and some other people. It was a lot of fun, right? Well, it looked like it was a lot of fun. I'd already gone back to Mississippi because I had to go back to work. But anyway, I remember that ride back with his mom. And the following year, I don't know how the hell I got back. I would have said the following year I thought he moved here.
Mm-hmm.
But then how did I get back? Because I don't remember any of this,
I have no
man.
idea, Arya.
I don't either, dude.
I would ask you these questions if they came up, but if you don't know, then I guess it's lost forever.
And I realize we're probably harping on this quite a bit, but like I've come here 7 years in a row, and I remember like 3 of them. And it's not because of drugs or anything like that. It's just, I don't know why. And it's confusing and it's perplexing and it's a little bit concerning. But in my defense, it's been a weird 2.5 years. It's 2 years and 3 months. And I've had a lot on my mind. There's a lot of stuff I don't remember from the last 2 years. They've been kind of a blur.
I'm really glad that you're here now to be able to do this. I know the impending, I'm sitting right next to the ticking clock here.
The doomsday clock.
The doomsday clock of Arya goes to prison in 10 days, 22 hours, 30 minutes, and 39 seconds. As of this recording, but I'm glad you're here to do this.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It's sort of been the tradition, at least since I've been here, that we come to Fork Fest and Pork Fest, and here you are, and we get to do this show and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. And I like being here. It is still bittersweet. It's bittersweet for many reasons, but one of those, again, is because Ian's not here.
Well, and also, too, from the selfish perspective, outside of, it's important for you to be talking because you're the one going to prison, right, and telling your story. But outside of that, from a selfish, I'd have had to learn a whole bunch of stuff about how to, do the show to maybe make one go on. And, I don't know that, am I capable? Probably, but... you've saved me a lot of work, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we probably wouldn't have bothered. I wasn't sure about bothering this year because, it's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much work it's worth doing for the festivals. It's important to be here and to do stuff, but as far as doing the show here every day, that's less important to me because when you look around, especially once Pork Fest is going, every other campsite is a podcast, right? And the only way that we really stand out from any of those is because we're also a radio show.
Right.
We happen to be a really big radio show on 200 radios, close to 200, it's 180 at this point, 185, I think.
Yeah.
But it's libertarians. You can't throw a rock without hitting a libertarian who has a podcast. And we're not putting on the best expo here, the best podcast here, right? When it's a little better this year than it was last year because I put a little bit more thought and work into it this year about where I wanted everything and how I wanted things. But we had discussed last year raising the stakes, right?
Sure, yeah. I remember you, me, and Mark talking about that.
Right, because we got this space. Mark's got plenty of money. It doesn't matter. He's frugal. It's very strange, but he's willing to spend money in bizarre ways, like with building the mobile studio and stuff like that. Okay, I don't know why you spent $80,000 on this, but okay. But so we talked about the possibility of like raising our presence here, which probably would have been good. But as time went on, it became less and less important to me. Yeah. And obviously this is for many reasons, but the main one was just that I'm not sure it would achieve anything, right? The real hangout right now for Free Talk Live, it's not anything in person or anything like that. It's just that we have to put more into the internet part of it than we really have been. And Free Talk Live has been a podcast since podcasts began, right? But our social media presence in particular has to be changed. And this is something that Bonnie and I have actively been working on.
It is improving, by the way, recently.
Oh, it's significantly better than it's ever been. Like now, Free Talk Live will actually like your stuff and share your stuff and comment, and Free Talk Live posts are getting likes and shares. And like Mark was under the impression that we need to hire somebody to come manage our social media, blah, 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 blah. And like, Mark, the problem here Mark wants us to have more tools. We need more tools. We need to hire programmers to come in and make new things for us to use.
I'm all for tools, but you have to have an explicit purpose before you go get the tools.
Well, the problem right here is that we already have countless tools that we're not using.
Yes.
Right? You want to hire someone to program this thing for you to increase our internet presence when you could just have me tweeting for you for free? Right? How about instead of doing any of that, you let me and Bonnie and whoever else wants to, Nikki and some others, just start posting stuff to social media, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah. And in the few months that it's been going on, it's substantially improved. We've lost a lot of followers, sure, but we lost a lot of followers when Free Talk Live brought me on. And when they brought Bonnie on, and when they brought Rich Paul, this is how things go. And the trolls in the Matrix chat that, have a hard-on for Mark. I don't know if I can say that. Well, I said it, and I'm not going to. But the trolls in the Matrix chat, they think Free Talk Live is like going downhill because it's no longer dominated by conservative libertarians, and it's more dominated by more liberal libertarians now.
Is that true, though?
It is. It's definitely true.
How do we measure our listenership in that way?
No, it's not. It's the hosts that we're measuring, not the listeners. It's the hosts, right? The hosts are more liberal now.
Really? Am I more liberal? Am I more conservative? I don't know.
So, I mean, Mark isn't on the show very often, and Conan, of course, quit the show, and they were our more conservative voices. Okay. And Mark is still on the show a lot, obviously, but instead of Mark, you have more Aria and more Bonnie and Nikki, and none of us are leftists, right? The people on the right say I'm a leftist, but people on the left call me a Nazi. So
I get the opposite of that. I get people on the left wanting to identify with me, and then people on the right also wanting to identify with me. And
okay.
I'm like, that's so weird, because usually there's like an opposition. It's like the lefties are going to be like, that guy's so far right, and the righties are going to be, that guy's so far left. But that's not the case. And I'm like, that's weird.
That is weird, because I get exactly the opposite, right?
I know that I come, like, my upbringing, I have several families, but like more of the families were sort of conservative Christian than weren't.
Okay.
And so that's like sort of the basis of my childhood. But then, I left home and I wandered the earth like Caine from Kung Fu, and I learned a bunch of stuff. And then I ended up in lefty paradise, Seattle, Washington, for 20 years. And so, like, did that have an influence on me? Absolutely. But I think that's what made me anarchist philosophically, was experiencing both the far right and the far left, right, over a different period of my time. And then when it came time to examine it, I was like, I'm neither of those.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm not a centrist either, because people are like, well, you're just in the middle, like most people. Most people, I think, are in the middle of left and right.
Well, then they need to read their Bibles.
And I'm like, yeah.
Because the middle sucks.
Yeah, I don't think most people are in the middle. I don't think centrism is a thing. I think that they're confusing not wanting to participate in a system of violence with being in the middle politically.
Right. I tend to be more toward anarchist, obviously. But I think I actually have a lot of my upbringing to thank for that, because, my mother was not a good parent. Neither was my father. They were both terrible parents, drug addicts, abusive. They weren't abusive toward me or each other, but my mom kept dating abusive men, and to my father's credit, he never beat my mother, never raised a hand to her. But a lot of drugs, a lot of just terrible parenting in general. But one of the earliest memories I have that deals with the government in any capacity was when my mother had taken us, and we lived out in this house in the middle of nowhere, and this sheriff came up to take my sister and I away from our mother.
Yeah.
And make us go live with our grandmother. This is not, I didn't want this.
Right.
My sister didn't want this. Our mom didn't want this. So who was this other entity
Right.
that was in charge of me that could tell my actual mother, no, you don't get to make the decisions
Right.
here. And that, I think, predisposed me to question authority because that made me ask, what gives them the right to take this crying child out of their mother's arms and send them elsewhere? What the hell gives them the right to do that?
Yeah. I had a similar experience as a child where my sister and I literally ran away from home, right, because the abuse was horrific.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But I'm not wallowing in it or anything like that. It's just a thing that happened. But we knew at the time as children that what was going on was wrong. So much so that we wanted to leave the situation. And so my sister, who's 3 years older than me, she was like, come on, we're getting out of here, right? And grabbed me by the hand, and we left, and we just started walking. We're in a residential neighborhood. I don't know how far we walked. We ended up at some people's house. We knocked on a door. They took us in. Right? They listened to our story. They fed us dinner, that kind of a thing. And then they called the cops, right? Because what else are you going to do? Some random kids show up running away from home, claiming abuse, right? What are they going to do, right? And we had no idea that this was going to happen. We just knew that we needed to get the F out of that situation.
Yeah.
And so they call the cops, and the cops take us down to the police station. And this is small-town Wisconsin stuff. So, there wasn't anything that I recall overtly frightening other than, they got to buzz you in through the right door, and you can't get out if you wanted to go anyway, kind of a
That's
thing.
a terrible feeling, though, man.
But here's what happened.
Especially for claustrophobic.
The cops, of course, call the parental units, and the parental units come down, and they chat about who knows what.
Oh, and they assure the cops that, oh, no, everything's fine. There's no abuse.
Cops sent us right back into the abusive situation.
God, man.
Didn't do a damn thing.
Similar stuff with me later on, like when my mother effectively kidnapped my sister and I. She was dating an abusive alcoholic who just beat the hell out of her. And on 2 occasions, it was so loud and so severe that the neighbors called the police. And on neither of those occasions did the police do anything.
Right.
And after, a month of dealing with this, of hearing my mother choking and saying that she couldn't breathe and just having the crap beaten out of her, I went to the kitchen and I got 2 knives out of the kitchen drawer and shouted, Mom, I got a knife. Like I was going to go stab this dude, right?
Yeah.
Me, little second grade Aria.
Yeah, you're trying to defend your mom.
Yeah, terrible idea, right? And I realized this very, very quickly that, I put the knives back and I went and just laid and cried on the couch for the rest of the night. But that was when I knew that the police weren't coming. The government wasn't coming. No one was coming. No help was coming.
Yeah.
I was on my own. And that was a terrible experience. But in hindsight, something like that provides valuable life experience.
It does, yeah.
Knowing that I was on my own, that this is a problem I can't solve, and as a second grader, there's nothing I can do to solve that problem. But I guess that in itself is its own interesting life lesson, that there are some things you just can't change, right?
Well, and I think, too, when it comes to libertarianism, voluntarism, anarchy, whatever the words are we're using to describe people who are of a mind of freedom, folks who realize that the state is an organization of evil, I think that many of them come to the philosophies of freedom after they've experienced some sort of attack by the state. And so for most folks, that doesn't happen until later in life, right? There's a whole bunch of folks who grow up, right? They rarely interact with the government outside of oh, I got to pay my taxes, or oh, I got a speeding ticket or a parking ticket, that kind of thing. Those are their interactions, and a lot of people are limited to those interactions only for a long period of time, until they got to do something like, I don't know, buy a house or pay some taxes, or there's some eminent domain thing, some other attack from the state wakes them up and makes them go, wait a minute, where did they get the right to do this? How come they're able to do that? How come, I thought that the government was X. It was here to protect us and defend us and prevent, people from taking our stuff and damaging other people. And they don't realize that is not the case until the state attacks them. And I think that, if you and I have a similarity, it's that we learned that as a child.
Sounds like it.
Now, I didn't internalize it as a child.
No, certainly not. I
didn't go, well, I hate the state now, right? When I was 5 or whatever, however old I was.
I resisted authority and I questioned authority, and I suspect you did as well.
Ever since that time.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was upset that these people who, even at that young age, I had believed were the people who were supposed to help.
Yep.
And they didn't.
Yeah, and they don't.
Yeah.
So, interesting ways to become libertarians. I mean, it sucks, but this is why I don't necessarily look at my childhood experience as negative. Or, I mean, sure, there was plenty of negative stuff.
Oh, mine was totally negative.
Yeah, but on the whole, like, I am who I am today because of those experiences. And all of that abuse that my mother endured, it ultimately led to some positive things, right? Like, I hate domestic violence.
Right, yeah.
And that's, in and of itself, that's not unusual. We should hate domestic violence.
Right.
You should get angry anytime someone introduces violence to their relationship, non-consensual violence to their relationship. Right. But for me, if I have a trigger, it's pretty close to that. Like, one time I was delivering pizzas to some apartment, and in the next door apartment, this husband and wife were just banging and yelling and crap at each other. I just couldn't take it. Knocked on doors like, hey, don't know what's going on here. Don't care.
Yeah.
Calm down. And little things like that. And that, I think, is a positive development. Something like that where one can... I'm not a domestic violence advocate, right? Or advocate against domestic violence or whatever.
Like you advocate
right.
for domestic violence? That's weird.
And due to those experiences, I've also never really had any major drug problems, right? I've seen what drug addicts do, and I've seen how these people become drug addicts.
I'm actually surprised that, I'm alive, really. Like, based on my past as a child, the things that have happened to me don't happen to people, and then they become well-adjusted individuals as adults, right? It's not very frequent that those things occur. I could have ended up in prison. I could have ended up a junkie. I could have ended up both, right? And I didn't. And why, I can't really tell you. I can't put my finger on, what prevented that. I did plenty of drugs. I was a rebellious youth, right? All of those things that happen, to children of abuse happened. But for whatever reason, I escaped the worst of it.
Well, congrats on that.
And I'm glad for that. And if anything, one of the many reasons that I do stuff like Free Talk Live is so that other people don't have to experience that. Like, I'm attempting to share my experiences with the world so that you can learn from somebody else's past without having to go through it yourself.
That would be ideal, right? I mean, because I never really give any thought why I talk. Why, like, before I was doing Free Talk Live, I was making videos. I started my own podcast called Rantings and Ravings, like way back when I lived in Mississippi. I've always interested in creating some sort of content. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. Like, what am I trying to accomplish here? I honestly don't know. But that would be a good goal, right? Is preventing someone from having to make the mistakes I made. Or in my case, I think telling them like there's hope. It will change. It doesn't matter what it's like for you right now. Give it some time. It will change. Things will get better.
Or even that it's possible. Like, the situation that you're in right now might be just heinous and unbearable and all that kind of thing, but it is possible for you to get out of that situation. Yeah. It is possible for you to outgrow that situation. And you touched on something a little bit earlier too. Consent, right? As a child, consent is sort of innate. You understand it. You're like, I didn't give you permission to do that. Why are you doing this? You're wronging me, right? It's understood fundamentally as a child. And then people they seem to outgrow that. They seem to forget what consent is. But if you just take the word consent, and I know the left is real big on consent, right? That's one of they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to...
With everything except the government, they're big on it, yeah.
Right, yeah. When it comes to, sicking the government on people or making laws for other people, they're real big on the word consent. Well, if they take that and just apply it logically to every area of their life, you realize that the state, that is the organization commonly known as government, exists in violation of consent.
Yeah, and, I would point out to them that I don't consent to it, and they go, well, blah, 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 blah. But no, put that I don't consent to being ruled by the U.S. government.
Right, or anybody for that matter. I'm perfectly capable of ruling myself.
But only the U.S. government claims to have the authority to rule over me. And they're like, well, yes, but you live in a society. No, I was born here. Society lives around me.
Right.
Right. A society is something that you choose to join.
Right.
What we have here isn't a society, it's being press ganged. You people press ganged me into joining service on your ship and then said if I disobey your captain, I'm going to be put in the brig. And then because I did disobey, no other crime, but I disobeyed the captain, I'm going to the brig in 10 days. I got press ganged into this. I didn't choose to join this. I didn't go, man, that ship looks great. Let me join it like I did with the Shire Society or Free Talk Live.
Right.
Those are actual, well, Free Talk Live is not a society, but Shire Society is an actual society. It's something that has these characteristics, and you look at it and you say, I want to join that.
Yeah.
There's nothing, people like to say we live in a society or whatever. What exactly is good about this situation where you press gang people into joining it, where you don't give them a choice, where you say, join our society, obey us, or die? And that's ultimately the line that they're drawing.
Absolutely.
They have all of these obfuscations around it, but the reality is that if the police tell you to do something and you don't do it, they will use any force necessary to make you to obey, up to and including killing you.
Yeah, and then there's people who are like, well, if you don't like it, why don't you leave? It's like, okay, well, let's apply that analogy, right? You've been press ganged onto a pirate ship, right? Do you think the captain of that pirate ship, the guy with the hook or whatever, he'd be like, if you don't like this ship, I'll let you join another ship.
Well, you're out in the ocean.
Not gonna happen.
And here, there's nowhere you can go that isn't claimed by one government or another.
Boom.
It's not like you can just go. There's more coming up here from Portfest. It is Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
On June the 17th is the day that you're listening to this, because we just wrapped up a wedding, if you're listening to this, and it was probably beautiful and a lot of fun, and I don't think I used the candles to set anything accidentally on fire. I believe the pavilion is still standing.
Wait, there's candles involved?
There are candles involved. It's a candle lighting. It's a hand binding / candle lighting ceremony.
Okay.
Right? Which I knew what a hand binding ceremony was, right? And it's a type of wedding where
is that like when you try to do the what do they call it when you're trying to race with another person and they tie both of your legs together and put it in like a burlap sack?
Sort of, except they don't race, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's their hands instead. I think it's an Irish. Tradition thing. I don't remember. Someone does it though, and you clasp hands and they bind them together, whereas Americans customarily kiss. Oh, God, that bug. We are at Rogers Campground, obviously.
There are insects at the campground. It is true.
The good news is I killed that one. He was biting the top of my foot, man, and that is like one of the worst places to get bitten by anything.
I don't know how it happened, but somehow I have a bug bite on the top of my bald skull.
Oh.
But it doesn't itch, at least not yet. And so now it's just a bump. It's almost as if like I had bumped my head and didn't know about it.
I don't want to suggest that bugs are really a problem. That's the first time I've been bitten, and I've been out here all day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, bugs aren't, and you have one bite on you. Bugs aren't, they're here. We are at a campground. We are in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And keep in mind, bring a hoodie. I think the first year I came to Forkfest, I neglected to bring a hoodie, and I regretted that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't think it's been down to like 30 in the last few years, but it can get down into the 30s. It can get pretty cold here. And even now during the day, it's only like 73, 74 degrees in the middle of June. This whole winter, this whole summer in New Hampshire has been relatively cool. It's been very weird, very perplexing.
So far, yeah. We had that one week where we had a couple of 90-degree days.
Yeah, God, that was brutal.
And I was thinking then, I'm like, oh, summer's going to be brutal. And then it wasn't.
Nope.
At least so far.
2 years ago, I think it was, or maybe it was last year.
We still got to do August, so, August is generally the brutal month.
I got so tired, like this was early in like June. I got so hot and so sick of it that I went to a hardware store and bought an 18,000 BTU air conditioner to throw in my house.
That'll do it, though.
Yeah. Oh, it rocks.
Do it. Yeah.
It's gorgeous. I love that AC.
The one that I bought for my we'll call it my apartment. It's like 800 square feet or something, right? 14,000 BTU, and it completely takes care of the whole place. So yeah, if you can get over 10,000 BTUs on your air conditioner, that's going to do the trick.
It was between a 15,000 one and this 18,000 one. It may even be a 20,000 BTU. I don't remember now.
Either way.
But yeah, anything over 10,000 is going to do the trick. But it was like $700, but it was so worth it.
Yeah.
And that was in early June.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so hot. I bought air conditioners for almost every room of the house. Then I put one in the upstairs bathroom where I never put a bathroom.
Yeah.
One of the bedrooms in my house just had no one in it. I still opened that up, threw an air conditioner in there, and turned it on and kept that door open because it was hot.
Yeah.
It was unbelievably hot. And this year, I barely turned the air conditioners on. And it's June. I go out at night to play with my dog, and I grab a hoodie still. In Keene, where not up here in the White Mountains, it was actually warmer last night than I would have expected. But still, just grabbing a hoodie to go play fetch with her here in June. And I asked my sister, I was like, hey, what's the weather like down there in Mississippi? And she's like, I'm dying. It's 97 degrees or whatever. I'm like, man, that sucks. Our summer is actually pretty mild and nice, and I actually kind of like it.
Yeah. It's certainly good for camping weather. It's good for a gathering of freedom-minded individuals.
It is, and that is what's happening here at Rogers Campground. It is Fork Fest right now, which means that this is the decentralized alternative to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It's not an alternative anymore, and we should probably retire that particular terminology. It's more the decentralized
pre-funk.
Yeah, it was the pre-party, and then it was the after-party, and now it's the pre-party again. But it was never really been. Only one year, I think, it was the alternative, right?
Yeah.
Where, like, the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And this was such a weird thing when Dennis Pratt was on. He kept saying that Pork Fest used to be something that just happened at the bottom of the hill, and now it's Pork Fest is the entire campground. And that's the opposite of how it's actually played out. Pork Fest used to be the entire campground. Like, you used to have to pass pork rangers and show them your bracelet and stuff to get into the campground.
Yeah.
And you couldn't rent a campground from Rogers. You had to get it through the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Right, yeah.
And they rented the entire campground out. And there would be pork rangers riding golf carts all up and down the place. It was disgusting. They were tyrants. They would yell at people for having something out on the road, like Azria's leash. If it was partial on the road, they would stop and yell, berate you for that. They were tyrants. The pork rangers were one of the years. So last year was the Pork Fest pre-party. I remember walking around with Ian talking to. Who was it? I don't remember who we were talking about. Ian and I had just walked around the entire campsite, and I went back to the hotel room to get something.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, was I outside smoking? I don't remember what I was doing. But I heard the head pork ranger then complaining over her radio or on her cell phone to someone about how she wanted to do something, but she didn't have jurisdiction. Because this wasn't Pork Fest yet. It was still Fork Fest. And
oh, wow.
That's how Pork Fest jumped the shark, man. They were crazy.
Yeah.
They were, at one point, they searched people's vehicles looking for Christopher Cantwell. And that was I knew by then that Pork Fest was already crazy, but that was like the nail in the coffin. And then all during Fork Fest, everything was fine. Everyone got along just great. But immediately, the night before Pork Fest, there were the golf carts everywhere, riding all up and down the streets. I'm trying to walk here. I can't because there's a golf cart parked in the middle of the street because some pork ranger decided to stop and talk to someone. It was that sort of entitled, unnecessary behavior, and that was throughout the entire campground. So when Dennis says that Pork Fest used to be something that happened at the bottom of the hill, no, Pork Fest was the entire campground, and you couldn't get in unless you had. I don't remember exactly how it works out, but it was the whole thing.
You can't get in unless you've paid.
And since then, they decentralized. Like, all of the vendor spots had to be reserved through the Porcupine Freedom Festival, through the Free State Project. And that created this huge mess where the fees were too high, and then they were very controlling. So all of the vendors closed down shop, and they moved several rows over to get off of Agora Valley, where Pork Fest was tyrannical, and they started just doing their own thing.
Sure.
And ultimately, they realized that their fees and their tyrannical behavior wasn't working, so they were just going to let the vendors sort it out for themselves. And they decided that in general, they were just going to let people sort out the campgrounds themselves. And Pork Fest, since then, has been something that happens at the bottom of the hill. And we said this, I want to say it was 3 years ago, that Fork Fest was the entire campground because we claimed it. And Pork Fest, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, was something that happened down there at the bottom of the hill. That's with the pavilions. And you do have to have your wristband to get into the pavilion, but not to the rest of the campground. In theory, if you're here, you should have a Porcupine Freedom Festival ticket. Not exactly sure how all of that works, right? And that's been part of a dispute between Dennis and I from like 2 years ago when he accused us of being like drunken teenagers telling people to sneak in or something. It was all very, very bizarre, but Pork Fest has changed a lot, and it's worth attending. If you got sick of the tyranny that you were seeing, 5 years ago, it's changed.
It has,
Give it another shot, and I promise you, you will see the difference. You don't have to check in with security as you enter the campground anymore. You don't have to worry about a park ranger running you over in their golf cart.
And, to the extent that the Porcupine Freedom Festival is 20 years now, right, it has grown.
Yeah.
Right. And by grown, I mean matured, not just like, there's more people that come now. No, I'm not even talking about that kind of growth. I'm talking about the people that have been coming for 20 years. Not only have they grown, but the attitude of the entire festival has grown because, there are more and more people moving to New Hampshire, more and more people coming to the philosophies of freedom and individuality and voluntarism than ever before. And so with that, of course, a festival is going to mature over 20 years. Why wouldn't it?
The only thing I'm not completely sold on is why does the Free State Project get PorcFest anyway, right? I'm not a big fan of intellectual property and all of that stuff, but why did the institutional organization get to claim and run PorcFest? To my mind, in hindsight, we should have just always called ForkFest the Porcupine Freedom Festival because the Porcupine Freedom Festival predates the Free State Project, right?
Does it?
I'm pretty sure it does, but it was happening here at least before they had picked a place to move, right? The very first year it was just some libertarians hanging out here, and then the next year they did it again, and there were more libertarians, and the next year there were even more, and at some point the Free State Project incorporated and decided that it was going to start running the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and it grew, and no doubt the Free State Project did a great job with it, but their power also grew.
Yeah.
And as such, a lot of people became intoxicated with the power. And I've seen this with a few different organizers. As far as I can tell, Carla's the only person who I've seen who organized the Porcupine Freedom Festival that never did anything that anyone said was tyrannical, right? And I mean, obviously, we're libertarians. So every libertarian out there says every other libertarian is not a real libertarian. That's not what I mean, right? I mean that every other organizer has been at the helm when something very controversial was done that could be fairly described as authoritarian or authoritative, rather. Like when the Paxtons were in charge, Ian got banned. And while they were just doing that on behalf of the Free State Project board or whatever, they were the ones who did it. This was my first year, so I'm hazy on all of this. But I do remember the Paxtons were in charge that year, and they were the ones who organized it. And then Carla Garrett took it over, and I don't remember anything like that happening.
Yeah.
And she did it, I think, 2 years in a row, and then Dennis Pratt took over. And for a few years, I don't recall anyone having any major issue. This is his third year. Last year was supposed to be his last year, but they couldn't find anyone to do it this year, or why-ever he chose to do it, now he's doing it again this year.
Okay.
And this year, of course, there have been countless controversies around the Free State Project. I mean, around the Porcupine Freedom Festival, more than I've ever seen. A lot of them unnecessary. And again, I want to reiterate that I don't think banning anyone is the way to go. I don't think boycotting the festival is the way to go. I think if you don't want to go see Robert F. Kennedy, which I'm right there with you, I don't want to go see him either.
I'm not going to go.
I've heard a lot of people say, well, yeah, but given he's got 2 family members who were assassinated by the deep state. Look, man, that's like suggesting that because I'm going to prison, you should ask my uncle what he has to say, right? Like, being related to me doesn't give him any insight into anything.
It's so weird that everybody jumps to that, right? Because everybody JFK and the conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. But like, he had nothing to do with any of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, but it was his uncle or whatever. Yeah, but he doesn't have any. They're like, but he thinks it was a conspiracy. So, but he doesn't know anything more about it than we do.
Right.
So, like, it's meaningless to me. And I get it. It's a good, just like Jeb Bush or George W. Bush, they had the claim to fame of their father being president. That's all it is to me, is he's popular because he had. But if you don't want to go see him, don't boycott the Porcupine Freedom Festival. If you don't want to go to the gun-free zone, don't boycott the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Right.
Come to the Porcupine Freedom Festival and then stand here giving him the finger from up here at the Hill because you refuse to comply with his demands.
I don't know if there's anything official, but I do expect some protest to occur. Yeah. I've heard tell of people who don't agree with the the disarming of people in order to go see this particular politician speak. And so they're going to stand outside near as they can get and protest, maybe hold a sign or something.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything official, but that's just what I heard.
Well, libertarians will do that, right? And
I'm looking
forward to covering
that. If that doesn't happen, I will be disappointed with, Porkfest in general. If there isn't somebody out there, protesting the gun-free zone in order to hear a frickin' politician lie to us, then I will be disappointed.
I suspect there will be people protesting. I don't know how I mean, as long as they're not disruptive, I guess it's fine. Obviously, I have no control over it anyway, so if they're disruptive, that's got nothing to do with me.
Right.
But I would rather people protest peacefully and not be disruptive, but make yourselves known, and I think ignore the guy. Make it clear that you're not listening, that you don't care what he has to say, and that he's just some politician who's here and no one really cares. There is one politician here who I would be interested. I say there's one politician here. If you Google me, it pops up that I'm a politician.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean,
because you ran for something.
Right.
Yeah.
So keeping that in perspective, that most of the libertarians that actually live in New Hampshire here are quote unquote politicians.
Sure.
When I say politician, you know what I mean, though. I don't mean people like me or Ian or
talking about
whoever.
Career politicians.
Right.
People who do this for
you.
their job.
There is one among them who I actually would like to have on Free Talk Live, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. And that's one to make Mark happy. Mark likes Tulsi Gabbard. I'm pretty sure he would like some risque pictures of Tulsi Gabbard. However,
if that's true, then perhaps Mark should invite her and come here and interview her.
Well, you would think that Mark would come here in order to say, I'm not sure it's official that she's going to be here, and I haven't actually looked. But I know there was rumors that she was going to come. But anyway, the only reason I'm interested in talking to her, she's a liar, just like all the others.
Yeah.
And she's going to change her positions, just like all the others. She's going to do whatever is politically expedient. However, she is anti-war. And she has consistently been anti-war. And I want to ask her on the air if she would pardon. She also did say, if I recall correctly, that she would pardon Ross Ulbricht.
Ooh.
I think she did. Someone asked her that, and I want to say she answered yes, but I may be wrong. Anyway, I want to ask her that, and I would like to talk to her about her anti-war positions and things like that. I would talk to her.
I wouldn't have as much of a, I'm going to say problem. I don't have a problem with somebody, inviting a politician du jour to come and speak, and if people want to go see him, it's their I don't have a problem with really any of that. What I do have a problem with is that it seems like it's going to be a one-way, it's going to be a speech, and that any questions that are asked are not going to be live. They're going to have that, like they put up a thing like, what questions would you like to ask Mr. RFK?
Really?
Yeah. I saw that on the social media, and people were submitting questions.
No
and
way.
So the questions that are going to be asked of this guy are going to be canned and pre-approved by not only whoever put up the poll, but, I'm sure RFK's staff as well and his campaign manager. And, it's got to go through all those channels. So
that's gross.
The questions, near as I can tell, unless something changes and this isn't playing out the way I expect it to, it's a one-way conversation with some canned questions at the end. And I would much prefer, if you're a politician and you want to find out what the Porcupine Freedom Festival or Forkfest is all about, you just show up.
Yep.
You just show up and okay, bring your armed security. We don't care because guess what?
Not at all.
We're all our own armed security as well. So you'd fit right in. Maybe we'd have a talk about, hey, why do you use that gun? Why do I use this gun? That kind of a stuff. Hang out with us. Be part of the festival. Don't come here and preach to us, right? Because we know more about freedom than you do.
What I would like to see, and now that I think about it, I mean, obviously, RFK is going to take some limo or something directly down there to the pavilion. He's not going to walk there from up here. He's going to get driven down there. He's got people for that. And he's going to get out and he's going to go into the pavilion and do his little speech. I would love, while they drive down Agora Valley here, for on both sides of the road to just be libertarians armed, just standing there, waiting, backs to him, right?
That'd be nice.
Like, as he just drives by. Because you're going to drive by a lot of armed libertarians to get to the pavilion anyway. So what if they put on a show?
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, man, you're on our territory now.
Yeah.
I bet he would just keep going. He would hit that circle and he would just keep going. That would be my guess, because that would be intimidating if you weren't a libertarian. Like me, I would never feel safer. At James Babb's party a few years ago that the Reformed Satanic Church sponsored, there were all sorts of, they called them Boogaloo boys. They were all over the place, and I had never been safer than I was right then. Everyone there was armed. Everyone knew how to use their arms, and everything was totally fine. But I'm a libertarian, so I expect that sort of thing. But a career politician, another one I'm not interested in is Vivek. And this is because
I know nothing about that guy. The only reason I've heard that name is because of the, we'll call it the drama around the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year.
That's all I know about it, too, other than what he said on Twitter. He wants to start a hot war with the Mexican drug cartels.
No.
This is nuts, right? And there are people who call themselves libertarians making apologies for this, saying, well, have you listened to what he really has to say? No. He explicitly said he wants to make war with the drug cartels. I'm not going to hear him out beyond that. I don't give my ear to warmongers, and I don't think any libertarian should. The moment they say they want to initiate a war is the moment the libertarians should stop listening.
Right, yeah.
Not hear them out.
Yeah. And, the mess that society is in because of statism is not going to be remedied by just electing the right guy.
That's true.
It's just we're too far gone from that. You're not going to find, even if you found somebody completely 100% principled, and you were able to get them on a ticket, and you were able to win the election, once they got in, they're not going to be able to present 100% according to their philosophies, their principles, because statism is the antithesis of principle.
Yeah, there's this whole administrative state that Jeffrey Tucker talked about last year of the Brownstone Institute. He'll be on, I'm sure, this year. He's on with us every year, so we'll catch him at some point and get him on. But he gave a speech last year about this administrative state and about how the president, you would expect the president to be in charge of it, but in reality, various laws passed by Congress basically give tenure to some of these bureaucrats. And the president can't just go in and fire the whole Department of Education or Homeland Security or whatever and then replace them with libertarians. He literally can't do that. So electing even Ron Paul as president isn't going to solve anything. You're not going to vote away the administrative state that was not created by voting in the first place. Yeah. And it's silly to think that you could. And Vivek's going to be here. RFK is going to be here. My biggest concern with all of this, though, are the wide-eyed libertarians, not the ones here in New Hampshire. I suspect the ones here in New Hampshire don't really care about these guys. But the rest of them, the ones coming here from Michigan and Tennessee and whatever, they feel like, the Libertarian Party is becoming legitimate. Big-name politicians are coming to speak at our festival, and we're the big boys now without any actual... I would love to see a poll done on that topic to find out which percentage of the libertarians who are happy about RFK and Vivek are not from New Hampshire.
Yeah. Well,
because in New Hampshire, we're used to the major parties, coming to us.
The system has a way of taking people who oppose it, figuring out how to get them caught up in the churn of statism, and then figuring out how to make them part of statism so that they become part of the problem that they were originally trying to eradicate. People get a little taste of either fame or power, right? Because politics provides both.
Yeah.
Right? They get a little taste of it and they're, I want more. Right? If you have any sort of psychopathic tendency, it's just going to happen. The system will not take somebody of noble intent and allow them to remain noble. It's just not possible.
And if they actually have noble intent and will remain noble, to his credit, Ron Paul did, Lou Rockwell letters aside, which was something else I wanted to mention earlier. You mentioned that most people... They don't have an issue with the state because they never run afoul of the state. And this is something that Lou Rockwell wrote in one of his books. He's got a lot of problems, right? But he writes some good stuff.
I've read some of his stuff. I enjoyed some of it.
I think it was called The Rise of Fascism or something. He wrote exactly that the Americans allow their government to persist because they're in denial. They're allowed to be in denial about what it actually is because they never have to come face to face with the fascism of the American government. Almost no one gets pulled over on some back road at 3 o'clock in the morning and harassed and insulted and wrongfully arrested. That doesn't happen to very many people, and it happens rarely enough that most people don't get worked up about it.
Yeah.
Most people are like, that never happened to me, or you shouldn't have been doing something wrong, or whatever nonsense, until their kid is the one getting arrested for having some Xanax that his friend gave him or something.
Yeah.
And then they're opposed to fascism. But we are out of time for tonight, and I've got to go rehearse a wedding, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But we're here tonight, tomorrow night. Come hang out with us here at Fork Fest. We're here until June the 18th, and then the Porcupine Freedom Festival kicks off. So we'll see you then. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn